Yeah, we're off. Hi, guys.
Museum of Neon Art. I'm in Glendale, California today, taking a tour of the Museum of Neon Art. Neon lights were invented by the French engineer Georges Clock. He first demonstrated neon lighting at the Paris Motor Show in 1910, where he introduced the neon lamp to the public. But the true origins of what we consider a neon sign goes back a bit further. Developed in the 1850s by the scientist and glassblower Heinrich Geissler.
Hey, Phil, good to see you,
Geissler
mate.
tube was one of the first lights that operated by illuminating pressurized gases in shaped glass tubes, producing similar effects to our modern neon signs by using rarefied gases such as argon. Like the neon signs we see today, they were powered by electrodes on either end of the glass chamber that would run a current through the gas inside, causing it to light up.
Oh, that's how it works. I
Geissler's
never knew
tubes
that.
were mainly produced and displayed as curious decorations and scientific novelties, but they could be found in a number of laboratories, including Nikola Tesla's. This was actually the beginning of Tesla's interest in wireless power. Tesla had a selection
Hey,
of
Susan,
Geissler
good to
tubes
see
in his
you.
lab, and one day, when he was fiddling with one of his Tesla coils, the scientist noticed that the Geissler tubes began to light up in succession as he turned the coils to different frequencies. They were reacting to the electromagnetic energy being transmitted by the coils. Born in 1856, Tesla was responsible for many inventions that have changed the world, including the AC electrical system that we use today, the induction motor, remote control, radio, X-ray imaging, and early concepts of radar. He also explored the possibilities of communication with intelligences beyond what we know, including those allegedly inhabiting other dimensions, as well as ideas about signals from Mars or other planets. That said, Nikola Tesla was fascinated by the concept of prana, as he was influenced and inspired by ancient Vedic philosophy. It is apparent that he studied several ancient practices of Tibetan Buddhism and Hindu Tantra, which he likely encountered through his interaction with Swami Vivekananda, an Indian Hindu monk recognized for his knowledge of esoteric yoga. Tesla began using the Sanskrit term prana in his work to describe what he understood as energy or life force. In his article titled
Have you got a
Man's
bad
Greatest
phone,
Achievement,
Susan?
Tesla described the universe in terms of a primary substance or ether acted upon by prana, which he equated with creative or life-giving force known as Qi in parts of Asia and Vril among European alchemical societies. He wrote, quote, "All perceivable matter comes from a primary substance, or a tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena." Tesla was particularly struck by the resemblance between the Vedic theory of matter and energy and modern physics, as discussed with Vivekananda in 1896. This meeting was influential, leading Tesla to explore how Vedic cosmology could intersect with his scientific work, focusing on the idea that force and matter could be reducible to potential energy, aligning with his views on energy and matter's fundamental nature. Tesla's engagement with these concepts was not just theoretical, he saw them as foundational to understanding the universe's mechanics, which he sought to harness through his inventions. His perspective was one where energy or prana and matter or akasha were part of an interconnected cyclical system of creation and dissolution, resonating with his broader views on energy, frequency, and vibration. According to historical accounts, Tesla filed for a patent for what some describe as the world's first flying saucer. This design includes features like
That's weird,
a
Susan.
discoidal capacitor for
Got a
thrust
card?
and smaller capacitors for directional control, alongside a gyroscopic stabilization system and an electric drive control. After Tesla's death in 1943, his papers, including those potentially related to such advanced technological concepts, were seized by the
Yeah,
U.S.
see, that
government,
doesn't hurt my
fueling
leg.
speculation around the idea of anti-gravitic propulsion technology commonly associated with UFOs. Some believe that his ideas might have been explored or even implemented by the military in secret projects. While Tesla's actual involvement in developing a UFO-like flying disc remains speculative, there are those that claim the technology that creates a gravitic distortion in space can also allegedly manipulate time, or at least allow one to perceive probable futures or past events. The first public reference to a Project Looking Glass came from the legendary UFO whistleblower Bob Lazar, back when he first emerged into the public realm in 1989, when he identified it as one of the classified projects run out of the S4 facility at Area 51. In an interview, Bob Lazar replied to a question about the project as follows: "Wasn't there something about Looking Glass, Project Looking Glass?" Bob replied, "Yeah, that was later on, when we started getting into the heavy physics of
Yeah.
it, because gravity distorts space and time. And what they were trying to do,
Phil, it's because of your beliefs. That's why they're doing that.
distort time to see whatever event they were trying to observe through a gravitational lens. So that was a different project. They were dealing with that, but that was essentially playing with gravity, distorting time." Here is a more recent interview where Lazar explains how the gravity propulsion systems inside a UFO work to Joe Rogan, where he makes the point that gravity affects time and therefore the propulsion system can manipulate space-time itself.
There was talk of weapon systems, that there were different projects. Project Galileo, Project Sidekick was supposed to be weapon applications of the craft. Project Looking Glass had to do with time, any effects of time in the craft. Now, I don't think we're not talking about making a time machine like in science fiction, but we're talking about, small distortions, intentional distortions of time, and how that can be used, as a, not as a, well, it was part of a weapon program.
How are you informed in this?
These again were just those small briefings that I read. But again, I don't really like to talk about those because I don't have any information on them, and it was just, small
Right.
briefings.
But you told Commander Fravor that what he saw might have been a time dilation in that.
It could
gravity
be,
propulsion.
because
Yeah.
gravity affects time, space-time. I'm sure you've heard of that.
What's fascinating to me too is that you were discussing this, the way this reactor worked, and that these things were not really connected.
No, nothing is connected. There's no wiring at all.
That freaks me the fuck out.
Charge your iPhone,
Yeah. Well, wireless,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Well,
simple
being
electromagnetic. Yeah, I know again, but that's just simple electromagnetic induction.
Right, but I mean, Tesla, the scientist,
I'm on my 4th channel because of YouTube. This is my 4th channel.
had this
I've had to start again 4 times.
concept of
Right, that's
what he's.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking
I mean,
about.
for other
Yeah.
people that don't know what we're saying, that he wanted to send wireless electricity through the sky, and Westinghouse was like, "Get the fuck out of here with that!" Like, when anybody could just pull electricity out of the sky.
Can't meter it.
Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't.
We had
meter
this
it.
talk in the car right over and trying to chill him out. We're talking about Tesla and how he couldn't be metered and how it all went down. So it's funny you bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
According to claims made by military intelligence insiders, the Looking Glass technology facilitated the ability to look backward and forward in time, using the consciousness of the operator as a type of steering mechanism. The operator would sit in a chair capable of interfacing with consciousness directly, allowing an individual to receive information by non-physical means.
And we can get into Looking Glass a little more. That's a device whereby the secret government can see the past or the future, not exactly, but approximately.
This essentially describes the ability to remote view, wherein the subject can become cognizant of objects or locations, presumably independent of time, using mind-clearing techniques and theta states of consciousness. This is suggestive of a time-space mechanism in the universe, wherein the human mind is uniquely equipped to navigate in time, able to access memories of the past, gain awareness of events in the present, conceive of future possibilities, and even imagine alternative events that did not actually happen. In other words, if a mind is properly trained or aided by some sort of external technology, it could be used to access non-experiential data in the same way one can recall a memory. The Looking Glass device seems to be capable of the same type of process to access a data stream from any conceivable location in space or time, steered via the consciousness of an operator. Nikola Tesla was known for his photographic memory, powerful imagination, and ability to visualize in 3 dimensions. He once said, quote, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there's a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration." Nikola Tesla died alone in his hotel room on January 7th, 1943. All of his possessions and personal files were confiscated by the US government after his death, allegedly to stop them from falling into enemy hands. But what happened to them? I already made a video about Tesla's involvement in the Philadelphia experiment, a top secret project that attempted to give the Allied powers invisibility for the war effort. The technology associated with these experiments were said to have been able to manipulate space-time and was rumored to work on the same principles that allowed for anti-gravitic flight. Prior to his death, Tesla spoke of a death ray he was working on, which several nations were interested in, and so the FBI was sent in to secure his final work. As most people are aware by now, the man that last handled his belongings
Donald
was
Trump's
none
uncle.
other than John Trump, the uncle of President Donald Trump.
When Nikola Tesla died suddenly in 1943 in a hotel room in New York, there was a lot of intrigue since he was so brilliant and worked on so many important things like motors and x-rays. A lot of people were worried that his unreleased work would fall into the wrong hands. So the FBI got involved, and they just released 65 pages worth of documents surrounding that intrigue in response to a FOIA request from Muckrock. Apparently, Tesla's good friend Lloyd Fitzgerald told the FBI that Tesla told him that he had actually finished a revolutionary type of torpedo, which he hadn't told anyone about yet. And Fitzgerald said that Tesla also told him he completed a working model of a death ray and had hidden it in a lockbox in New York. Adding to the intrigue, Tesla had a relative he didn't like very much, named Sava Kasanovic. Kasanovic was from Yugoslavia and had connections to the Axis powers, according to a New York Times source in the document. And apparently Kasanovic was at the hotel on the night of Tesla's death and searched the lockbox. He ended up taking a few pictures only, apparently nothing major, but still, the intrigue swirled. So just to make sure they didn't miss out on Tesla's death ray, the FBI decided to have an expert thoroughly look over all the stuff Tesla had left behind. That expert was an MIT engineer who had worked for the government on stuff like radar research, so they trusted him. And that MIT engineer was none other than Donald Trump's uncle, John G. Trump. So Donald Trump's actual uncle was the person to inspect Tesla's supposed death ray machine. For real, you can't make that up. Now, to me, that's pretty funny. I mean, maybe that's why Trump's so confident when it comes to bragging about our military and bossing other countries around. Maybe his brilliant scientist uncle saw some secret plans of Tesla's that the president nephew now knows about.
The official story is that Trump's uncle did not find anything important. But given the media's habit of distorting the truth, especially in regards to wartime technology, many people question the validity of the official story. That said, here's a short clip of the events in John Trump's own words.
From New York, I boarded a plane to Boston to find Dr. John Trump of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Dr. Trump was now retired from the company he founded, High Voltage Engineering, but he agreed to meet me at the company office the next morning.
In the spring of 1943, Dr. Carl T. Compton, who was then president of MIT, asked me to go to New York and examine the effects of Nikola Tesla. These were contained in the upper floor of a warehouse.
Hey, boss, good to see you, mate.
And I spent a good deal of time examining one by one the papers, the books, and various other memorials that he had accumulated. But I was particularly looking for something which would be evidence of a secret weapon, which I was reminded by the agents, the two agents who were present during the entire time, was a matter of concern to the United States. In the course of this, I did come across a number of letters directed at the upper echelon of the British Empire, that is, I think, to the King and Queen, or perhaps just to the King of England, and also to the Tsar of Russia, explaining that he was the inventor of a secret weapon which had rather remarkable properties, and that he would be interested in entering into a negotiation which would lead to a disclosure of what they were. Of course, I spent a good deal of time looking through these papers, trying to find out what the nature of this secret weapon was. I think I had, although I don't remember it so very accurately, an idea of what its properties were. It had the capability of acting at a great distance, of being destructive to flying objects and things of that kind at a place which was remote from the source. But nowhere in his technical papers did I find anything which revealed an explanation of just how such a device could operate.
I believe that you also opened another box, supposedly a secret weapon that he left at another hotel. Can you relate that story, please?
Yes, when I had substantially concluded my study on the following day, I think that was a Saturday morning,
Yeah, boss, it was patrolling the Muslims.
I was reminded by one of the two agents that there was a box being held as a security for an unpaid obligation, and that this box was an item of considerable value.
Scared the shit out of me, Molly.
Itself, the secret weapon, that it was armed, and therefore it probably was not touched.
Were you nervous doing this?
I found it a matter of a bit of concern. However, I realized that this had to be done, and so we taxied down to this hotel. The agents identified themselves and their credentials to the assistant manager of the hotel, who led us to a room. This room was essentially empty except for a table and a steel cabinet against the wall, which was open. I think perhaps he opened it with a key. The cabinet itself was empty, except on one of the lower shelves.
No,
was
Barry,
a
no,
package
the doggies
of box,
next door.
rectangular
Come on, up
box
your hole.
of ordinary size,
No, boss.
which was wrapped in brown wrapping paper. It turned out to be a highly polished box with brass clasps, and it looked more like an instrument case. And after waiting a while, or listening a while, and remembering that it had been there for quite a few years, I think it had actually been there for about 5 years as a security, I opened it. And my report to Dr. Compton was that I saw no danger in releasing these papers and these relics to his heirs.
Miss Musar had arrived too late to know who had opened Dr. Tesla's safe or what had been removed. And Dr. Trump had found nothing which he considered dangerous or a secret weapon. Tesla had been a naturalized American citizen for 54 years, so why were his papers seized by agents of the custodian of alien property? I suspect that governments other than those of the United States, England, and Russia were interested in the inventions of Dr. Tesla.
Indeed, governments other than the United States, England, and Russia were interested, as this was 1943, at the height of World War II, and the most technologically.
Lord, we're going to pray on behalf of Stephen. Susan's, I'm not sure the relationship, but we hope you step in and comfort Susan and Stephen as well, Lord. On Susan's behalf, we pray for that.
Advanced nation in the world at the time was Germany. While it's a fact that Germany did not win the war, it's also a fact that military expeditions continued immediately following the official end of the war, such as Operation High Jump, which was a literal invasion of what was an allegedly German military base in Antarctica that was rumored to house Germany's most advanced technology, as well as the last battalion of the SS, which never surrendered in 1945.
Yeah, sorry, Susan, I wasn't sure if it was your husband or son. But prayers for him.
While there are those that question the speculation regarding Operation High Jump, they are often the same people that question the Battle of Los Angeles in 1942, where disc-shaped craft hovered above the west coast of the United States for hours, or the alleged disc-shaped craft that crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, or the disc-shaped craft that, according to national press, outran jets and flew over the White House with impunity in 1952.
Well, actually, what this booklet does.
They've done the same thing in the last couple of weeks, haven't they? Flown over Washington, the UFOs. Pretty sure they have.
It discusses a great many of these sightings around Washington, D.C., particularly those of mid-July 1952, when about a dozen of the things came over. About a dozen of them came over one night. They were tracked by radar. They were seen visually. They followed the planes in, and according to the CAA's own booklet, the pilots got good looks at the things as they followed them in and out of the airport. Some of them hovered.
Love you back, Susan.
The Capitol building. Some went over the monument and the White House, and over the deep freeze, and circled all around there. They were seen plainly. There's no question about them being there. And as a matter of fact, the officials were so concerned about it that on the following morning they issued a shoot 'em down order. Why didn't they shoot 'em down the first night? They didn't shoot 'em down because the jets couldn't catch them, and they've never been able to catch one yet. The jets couldn't catch them. The next night they showed up. The jets didn't go up after them. They didn't go up with their shoot 'em down order for the simple reason that Albert Einstein and others of comparable standing heard about the shoot 'em down order because the story was on the front pages all over the world. They heard about this shoot 'em down order, and they personally got in touch with the little man in the White House. And I know what Mr. Einstein told him. He said, Mr. President, anyone who can cross millions of miles of space will be able to take care of himself after he gets there. Don't
well said.
You can't finish.
Well said.
That was one time to give him hell, Harry decided it would be better not to give him any hell.
The official word from the US government regarding flying saucers at the time was either that they were weather balloons or aliens from another planet. The idea being that they could control both sides of the story, whether people believed that they were real or fake, as long as they did not suspect that they were.
So I wonder what year the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. I wonder what year that was. Was that 1952 or 53? Because 53 would make sense. UFOs flying over Washington it makes sense when they make a movie of it.
Originated on Earth, especially by German nationalists that they could not defeat, whose technology would make the Rockefeller energy sector monopoly obsolete. While these craft posed a national security threat, the threat of free energy was arguably of greater concern, as it directly challenged big oil and their stranglehold on the world economy. It was Nikola Tesla who said, quote, "Before many generations pass, our machinery will be driven by a power obtainable at any point in the universe." This idea is not novel. We find it in the delightful myth of Antheus, who derives power from the earth. We find it among subtle speculations of one of your splendid mathematicians. Throughout space, there is energy. Is this energy static or kinetic? If static, our hopes are in vain. If kinetic, and this we know it is, for certain, then it is a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very wheelwork of nature.
Well
in a
said.
1964 televised interview, George Van Tassel, who claimed to have had physical contact with Nordic human-looking extraterrestrials, says that they showed him technology that could be used to view a visual scene from any historical time period by manipulating time, and which the U.S. Navy had in its possession. Van Tassel said that the technology was quickly classified and seemed to be very similar to what was described decades later by Bob Lazar as Project Looking Glass, which he also said was run by the Navy.
On the bottom side of the disk are the 3 gravity generators. When they want to travel to a distant point, the disk turns on its side. The 3 gravity generators produce a gravitational beam. What they do is they converge the 3 gravity generators onto a point and use that as a focal point. Then they essentially bring them up to power and pull that point towards the disk. The disk itself will attach onto that point and snap back as they release space back to that point. Now, all this happens in the distortion of time, so time is not incrementing, so the speed is essentially infinite.
And this is a really old video, so imagine how ahead they are now. Wow.
So it's safe to talk about flying saucers and people from outer space, people who may be circulating among us now and who demonstrate their unearthly qualities if they choose you as one of their agents, and who land on this materialistic earth in flying saucers. No way. I'm not really joking, because I've got a man now, here and now, one of the men who claims fervently he has met these people from outer space, has talked to them, and has been given secrets of things such as a time machine from men from outer space. You'll meet this man after this plebeian and earthly message. The man you're going to meet in a moment or two, in Tassel, from Giant Rock, California, is a most unlikely person to claim to have seen flying saucers and been in touch with people from outer space. George is a very ordinary fellow. He doesn't make any money out of his flying saucer beliefs, but boy, he really believes them. Before I start talking to George, I want to tell you, too, that I do have a couple of doubts in my mind. We all see these newspaper reports from Socorro, New Mexico, that a mysterious craft landed and took off and left blast marks in the sand. Airline pilots from time to time talk delicately about strange aircraft circling their normal aircraft in flight, perhaps even cutting off the power of their engines momentarily. We all love to talk about the mysterious and the unknown and the flying saucers. So now it's to George Van Tassel and this question. Time machine you're building down in California.
Well, Jack, this was the result of a formula which was given to me by a man who landed a ship at my airport in 1953. And we put this formula under research, tested a number of experiments on a bench in a good electronics lab in Chicago, and we produced phenomenal results with evidence that we should do it on a larger scale in order to be able to do more with it. And this evolved out of something that started in 1953 into a 4-story high machine that we're working on down there today.
Now, George, I don't care whether the machine is 4 stories high or 40 stories high or 4 inches high. When I say calmly and unexcitedly, a time machine, what does your formula tell you you can do with a time machine?
Well, Jack, our formula has no time factor, which electronic formula does have. And on the other hand, electronic science has only had 2 dimensions to work with, the electric pattern and the magnetic pattern perpendicular to it. And we discovered a 3rd zone, which we call a time zone, And we are working through this zone with an effort to orient the magnetic field to give us other results than our science can obtain at present.
George, it's double talk to me. A time machine means to me a little box that I can go into and go back 5,000 years or forward 10,000 years. Is that what your formula tells you can do?
Well, Jack, this isn't a little box. This is a four-story machine focusing fields that we can orient to produce this zone big enough for a man to get into. It isn't a box.
But what happens to the man when he gets into the zone? I'm
Well,
all agog with curiosity.
Jack, we've discovered this zone is subject to thought. Now, since time doesn't record events the way we do on calendars and clocks, you could only record an event by thinking of it. Now, theoretically, we believe we can take a videotape magnetic camera into the time zone and photograph Lincoln's Gettysburg Address or Caesar's armies marching or anything that's ever happened.
Let me get this straight. In other words, you're telling me, like H.G. Wells imagined 50 years ago, that everything that happened in time is still there to be seen by the recreation electronically of a thought which exists.
Jack, you know how you talk into a tape on a tape recorder and play the interruptions back, identical to the play that you made. The Earth's magnetic field is the same way. You can put interruptions into it and play them back out of it. An associate of ours in creating a magnetic coupler with this principle, coupled in the Earth's magnetic field and play.
They seem to release them in Africa first, Diane. Ebola. Look at all they've been releasing there. They're just getting hit with plagues all the time.
In fact, TV shows from stations that aren't even in business anymore.
You mean an experiment has been done to bring out of the air television programs which have been and gone?
Been and gone.
Now, where was this experiment conducted?
It was conducted in Santa Monica by an associate of mine.
Why hasn't this hit the headlines throughout the world? That's a time machine in action. If I can...
Jack, the reason it hasn't hit the world is because, as I understand it now, the Navy Department took him and the research over because he also discovered he could bounce magnetic echoes off the ionosphere and locate submarines under the ocean, regardless of where they were.
So who is this associate of yours?
This is a fellow named Charlie Arts.
Charlie Arts?
Yeah.
And is he a free man walking around today?
Well, he's free where he is in this super secret research he's conducting.
Now, so therefore, you tell me soberly in front of the television camera that things, old television programs have been recreated out of nothing.
Played back with a picture and the sound just as good as the day they were broadcast. We've done this many times.
Why didn't you bring one up with you?
Well, this requires quite a piece of apparatus. This magnetic coupler works on around 50,000 volts, and it doesn't have any radio frequency.
This is pretty interesting. This guy's interesting.
Connected with it, and actually the television.
You like this, Vash? You like the technology side of things?
Set which plays back the picture doesn't even have an antenna connected to it.
You have a time machine plan. You have done experiments which show you can bring the past to life. Where did this formula come from?
I love that Scotch accent. Jack, the formula came from a ship that landed at my airport in 1953 on August the 24th, which had 4 people aboard it that came from another planet.
I'm breathless.
Well, you're not only breathless, I was breathless.
But I'm cynical, too.
Well, that's fine. That's the way to be. In fact, I'm a bigger skeptic than you are of many things.
I'm an unbeliever. Convince me that this really happened to you.
But what is occurring now has occurred before. There's many records of these ships landing throughout history, clear back into Sanskrit. And there are records in the 1898 Chicago newspapers that covered the front page for 3 days of a big ship setting over Chicago.
But I want to go back to that night in 1953. Tell me, where did this happen for people who haven't had your talk or seen you yet?
It happened on my airport, which I've operated for the last 16 years, at Giant Rock Airport, 17 miles north of Yucca Valley in California, or 40 miles north of Palm Springs.
Now, this is a private airport for small aircraft, is it?
This is an airport used both by the military and private aircraft.
You own this airport?
I leased this airport from the United States government. I've operated it for 16 years since I retired from the flight test business in the aviation.
Right now. How old are you now, by the way, Joe?
I'm 54, Jack. Got 3 grown daughters married and 11 grandchildren.
You don't mind if I ask you the stock question? I know that you've been asked every obnoxious question that can ever have been asked. You've never been treated for any form of emotional upset.
I've never had an emotional upset other than women.
Except that night in
other than
Yucca Flats,
women.
not Yucca Flats, a giant rock, when this ship appeared. Now, give me the details, John, because I'm never tired of hearing the details of a man who says he has seen creatures from another world.
Yeah, right up your alley, Vass. I knew that.
Well, actually, Jack, this was as simple as crossing a street and getting hit by a car. After it's over, you're the victim of the circumstance. And I didn't see the ship land. One of my son-in-laws, that wasn't my son-in-law at that time, saw it come down. Another man on the airport heard it, and he wasn't where he could see it. And the man got off of the ship and approached me before I even knew there was a ship down.
What did you see?
A bell-shaped type of anti-gravity ship that they operate as a scout ship out of their big carriers.
How big?
This was 36 feet in diameter and 19 feet high.
And where was it? On the ground?
No, it was hovering 10 feet off the ground. And there were 3 men on the ship, besides the one that had got off and invited me aboard.
You keep calling him man. What do you mean, man?
Well,
Little green man?
They could have walked in our clothes down any of our streets and we wouldn't have paid any attention to them.
And did these people tell you where they came from?
They didn't say where they came from, but I've been in the air game since 1927, and their instruments were unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Well, don't give me technicalities. What was different?
The difference was that we used dial instruments and they used vertical instruments, like fluorescent tubes with marks on them.
What color were these people?
The instruments were marked in symbols similar to hieroglyphics. They were not in any language or number system we use on the Earth.
What color were these people?
They looked like they were white people with a good healthy tan.
And was that your only contact with the...
That was the only contact I had with the people from the ship.
Have you had any other contacts with people?
I've had a recent contact last September, 1963.
Well, I don't have to ask you. Tell me.
Well, in this case, they drove a car into the airport. They didn't come in a ship. They're walking among us on the Earth all the time, and we don't realize it.
Australia's biggest ever prize fund lottery is closing soon. Hurry, search Dream Home Union today.
This is a secret of the used car market, but many people still don't know it. This groundbreaking car spray will make your car look brand new without costing a fortune. It will remove...
As wild and fantastic as that sounds, it was largely supported by a naval intelligence officer, William Tompkins, who worked with U.S. spies during World War II.
Hey, Talia,
that
good to see
claimed
you.
the German Reich had anti-gravitic craft and the ability to distort space-time. He also claimed that military intelligence was now in possession of this technology and that governments work with Nordic people from elsewhere. In fact, he himself alleges to have personally worked with what he describes as these Nordics.
At the end of the war, Germany had already removed massive, not underground, in mountain. All over Germany and the occupied countries, Germany was building mass production of a dozen different types of extraterrestrial vehicles using slave labor, with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of in-mountain massive facilities. 80% of that had all been removed from Germany 6 months before the war ended. It had all been taken to Antarctica, and they were continuing the construction down there. They had access to these with their submarines. They built massive truck submarines, enormous submarines, to bring all this stuff down to Antarctica. So the submarine, still submerged, goes through these tunnels. They go back through the tunnels and they get to a lake where there's all these facilities and the cities and naval bases and towns and thousands of people. Now, what this turned out to be, after I got heavily into this is the first time anybody in the United States knew that extraterrestrials were actually here on the planet and actually were working with Germany, had agreed, legal agreements with Hitler. We then had these Navy spies, which we had operating there 24 hours a day from 1942 to the end of the war. I worked in that office. There was a young lady in Europe who was named Maria Orsic. Now, she was sort of tapped on the shoulder and told a very strange thing. They told her she should get her friends together, all the people you knew, and people that were in different technical fields, many people, and design a kilometer-long space transport.
He's trying to do a Trump with the comb over. It's looking really bad.
So in my book, Selected by Extraterrestrials, I talk about Maria, and I have 14 different places in my book about the people that helped her. And it got to be 1,443 people were working with her to design and build a kilometer-long commercial type space transport. Okay? There were shoe salesmen, there were farmers, there were technicians, there were engineers, there were scientists. All these people were working together to design a massive space transport. Of course, the SS found out. And now we have these people from a different part of the galaxy. They're called Nordics. Whoops, I didn't want that in there. Wait a minute, you don't realize I'm working hard. This is hard work in the Navy. And yes, I do have my own photo lab for all these secret documents that we have to come up with. And the girl second from the left, she's in our office, and I've been dating her for quite a while. I got a good job, it's good pay, all right? And so I'm in there for only 4 weeks. They take me out of the wind tunnel group and they put me into a secret lab. They found out about my background. So now what we're doing in Northrop, now you know who Northrop is. They're the guys that do the flying wings, right? They build the flying wings. But that's not what we're doing. We're building airplanes that fly in space. All different kinds of space planes that can fly in atmosphere. So the one you're looking at here is just one of hundreds. This went on for 2.5 years. I worked a short time after Northrop at North American and over at Lockheed. Actually, I worked for Lockheed actually 3 times. What I want to explain is that the vehicles that we designed for all of these missions after the moon mission are massive. They're like 40 times the size of the little Apollo over here on the side of the picture, okay? Just as we got ourselves started on this, 3 people came in and landed over at Las Vegas. They spent 2 weeks in Vegas. Then they came over to Douglas. And it turned out that one of the girls was then the section chief for the propulsion group. And the other girl was my second. She was my section chief's typist, okay? So here we have 2 beautiful Nordic girls and this good-looking Nordic guy that helps them. He's not there all the time, who are contracted to make sure that we do all.
I've seen this guy before.
All of the Apollo. Wow. Hey, this is cool. Now, you have to look at my secretary. Yes, she does look like somebody else, okay?
Marlon.
She has a sense of
humor. Dietrich. Look.
Yes, she does look like somebody else, okay? But she has a sense of humor that you absolutely cannot, you can't ignore. Now, she's brilliant. Now, when I'm in a meeting on the Apollo, in a conference room with 15 or 16 other of the top people, and we're fighting this problem for, say, 3, maybe 4 hours, and you can't lick this one. She puts it in my head and she says, Billy, why don't you just say, use so-and-so? And that was the answer that we needed on the Apollo program to handle this. She puts that stuff in my head. And now it's my idea. I get credit for it, okay? And I'm going up like this. And she does this every single day. She comes up with something again that's absolutely needed. And it's never wrong. It's always the right answer. And I had this girl for 4 years on the Apollo program, okay? She's brilliant. Yeah. You can't believe what she knows, but she's a Nordic. She's here from the Nordic Navy. She's a full commander in the Nordic Navy. Oh my God. And she's not 17. She's a whole lot older than that. Okay, but she still looks 17. You can't believe what that 4 years was. So, not being able to meet any of the contracts from NASA on our S-4B, because we are orders of magnitude more advanced than anything that the paperclip guys could even know how to do. So I put this into a package. I have the model. I fly it down to the NASA base, and my secretary told me over the phone. Actually, she told me, talking to me before I left, and she said, I wrote you a letter to get you into NASA, but you're not going to need it. The elevator opens. We go upstairs, we go to the top floor, that elevator opens, and Von Braun is in this side, and Dr. Dubas is in the other side. There's a great big office, and there's an enormous conference room table between it. And we ended up, they guaranteed us a $79 million systems engineering contract.
Dr. Hermann Oberth, who pioneered rocket design for the German Reich during World War II, and later advanced rocket technology for the American manned space launches, cryptically stated, quote, "We cannot take the credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped." When asked by whom, he replied, "The people of other worlds."
Wow.
He then went on to say, "It is my thesis that flying saucers are real and that they are spaceships from another solar system. There is no doubt in my mind that these objects are interplanetary craft of some sort. I and my colleagues are confident that they do not originate in our solar system. Dr. Walter Riedel, who was once chief designer and research director at the German Rocket Center.
Yeah, Talia, Valiant Thor, apparently he come from Venus and he worked in the White House in the 50s. I've got an LA Marzulli one on him after this. So I'll play that after this one.
At Penemunda said, quote, "I'm completely convinced that UFOs have an out-of-world basis." Jack Parsons was the founder of both the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, and the Aerojet Engineering Corporation, not to mention inventor of solid-state rocket fuel. Werner von Braun called him the father of American rocketry. That said, Parsons was also a high-ranking sex magician in Aleister Crowley's occult religion, as well as roommates with L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of the Church of Scientology, who happened to also be a naval intelligence officer during World War II. In disclosed documents leaked after a court case of Scientology's highest secret esoteric level, known as OT8 Confidential Student Briefing, Hubbard disclosed his belief that the Earth is effectively a prison planet that is controlled by a relatively small sect that has the occult ability or technology to perceive outside of linear time and therefore covertly manipulate and steer events on Earth. Which brings us to the underground vaults of the Vatican, where among its hidden subterranean archives is said to be the chronovisor, a device believed to have been built in the early 50s or 60s by an Italian scientist and priest, Father Pellegrino Maria Ernetti, that apparently allows people to view the future and witness historical events as they unfolded. Ernetti asserted that the chronovisor operated by detecting and decoding residual electromagnetic radiation left behind by past events, citing a team of scientists and Nobel laureates who collaborated on the project. Yet the Vatican, where Ernetti claimed the chronovisor was developed, has remained tight-lipped about its existence. Church officials neither confirmed nor denied Ernetti's assertions, adding additional layers of mystery to the story. But some argue that the church might be safeguarding such a device due to the potential implications on historical and religious narratives. Whether the chronovisor is a genuine invention or a clever fabrication, its alleged ability to display past events by tapping into the vibrational frequency left behind, implying that every moment creates an imprint of energy on a timeline, kind of like how we record and can play back music, is interesting in light of Tesla's work and modern findings in quantum physics and electromagnetic fields, allowing it to connect with a theoretical quantum or plasma field that holds all possible timelines and events. If such a scenario exists, then Project Looking Glass raises some big questions about free will versus determinism. Some theorists suggest that those in power have discovered a future timeline that elites running the world don't want to see happen. Maybe it's the expected dawning of an age of a global awakening of humanity, and they're now using this looking glass to manipulate timelines in an effort to delay and prolong the inevitable. Maybe more than one organization or faction has access to similar technology, competing to influence desired timelines. Maybe the outcome of past historic events, such as civil wars or World War II, were already covertly altered. If we accept the testimonies and information gathered from Lazar, Van Tassel, Tompkins, Ober, and many others, then it is clear that the U.S. military intelligence community has likely acquired what may have originally started out as off-world anti-gravitic technology, also developed by the Germans, and has been conducting Project Looking Glass since at least the early 50s, with some independent researchers claiming that both the military intelligence community and other unelected elements in the deep state are using time-distorting technologies to peer into the future, used by different factions to potentially anticipate each other's future moves. That said, it has been reported that President Donald Trump is not only aware of the Nordic presence and their technological influence, but is on the verge of disclosing it to the public. Maybe that is why he's been so optimistic lately and always dancing.
That's funny, his dance. Okay, here's one on Valiant Thor with L.A. Marzulli. Oh, my voice went, baby.
This incense waterfall has 75 million views in the last week alone. It's insanely affordable.
UFOs are real, versioning, and not going away. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Special presentation. Every time I do this show, I say it's a special presentation because new information is constantly coming across my desk. I want to thank all my little web spiders out there, and you know who you are. You're the folks that shoot me emails with either images or articles or whatever, and I can't possibly do all the research myself. So I just want to give you a shout out for helping out with the show. And if you've got an article or something, a picture you want to send, la@lamarzulli.net, la@lamarzulli.net. So we'll get into this. We're going to be talking about Valiant Thor. What was that, and why is this creeping back in to the whole UFO dialogue right now in modernity? But first, a word from our trusted sponsor. Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made, now he's shot. The man is in his 80s and still kicking butt and working out and staying active. So here's a true story. We lost a house in 2018, and we moved over to Thousand Oaks down in the valley. And it was culture shock, Peggy and I PTSD. Anyway, there was a YMCA there, and I joined it. There was a workout. There were 2 workout trailers, I believe. And the trailers were really good size, double wides. And they had all this workout equipment in them. I go in there on a Sunday morning, and I start working out. There's this older guy in there with me, and I'm following him on the circuit as we're going around the machines, and I'm realizing that this guy is packing some guns up here. I mean, I'm doing one of these presses like this, and he's doing 40, 50 pounds more than my maximum weight. He's about my height. He's also got some paper in his hand. It looks like a script. So I strike up a conversation. I go, "Wow, you're really lifting some heavy weights here. I guess you've been doing this for." "Oh yeah, I've been doing this forever." Blah blah blah. You trying out for a part? And he kind of grins and looks at me and goes, "Yeah, it's a script." So we keep working out. I don't bother him anymore. As I'm getting ready to leave, I go, "Hey, nice meeting you. Hope to see you again. Good luck with the part. Hope you get it." So this is a true story, folks. I'm walking out of the car and the light bulb goes off. Oh my gosh, that's Chuck Norris. It's like, hello. And that's happened more than once. The bottom line is, this is true. This is no hype. He's in amazing shape. Okay, let's continue. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, can work out longer, and even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing too, and she never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger. Her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/LA or by clicking on the link below this video. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/LA. Click on the link in the description below to watch the video now. You won't believe how simple it is. Just a reminder, the legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 84 years old. And
Valiant Thor's from Venus, so how did he have a sister?
Yet has more energy than I do. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to himself simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Folks, check this out. Please go to the description box below, chuckdefense.com/LA, www.chuckdefense.com/LA. So here's the JPEG on March 16, 1957, in Alexandria, Virginia. Valiant Thor landed his craft and was met by 2 police officers with their weapons drawn. Through thought transference, he convinced the officers he meant no harm as he was ushered into the back of their patrol car. After crossing over into Washington, D.C., they were met by the Secretary of Defense along with 6 of his staff members. Now, do I believe that? This is the stuff of legend. This is where the whole UFO phenomena gets real foggy, real fast. Can I bet that? I can't. But it's part of our culture now. That's, the 57. My gosh, that's like the decade I was born. I was born in 1950. So this story has been around for a long, long time. Here's a close-up of what you're looking at right here. That's Valiant Thor, allegedly. And, we don't know what we're really looking at. Who was this guy? And he's the man on the far right that you can see. So in the very first photo, that's with the headline, Valiant Thor from the planet Venus. You're looking left to right, Jill, Dawn, and Valiant Thor. So, again, this is the stuff of the 1950s. And I've talked about this before, but I have to reiterate it because it's really important. 1945, you have the atomic bomb blast in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 47, you have the Roswell crash. Where? You guessed it. Roswell, New Mexico is home of the 509th Bombing Group, who dropped those atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's why they're there. And I believe it may have been a deliberate crash. It definitely was not a weather balloon. How many witnesses do we need to have come forward? Okay, so that's a close-up of Valiant Thor. This is from an FX special on Valiant Thor, where Valiant Thor meets with President Lyndon Johnson, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, people in the military are there, and they go into a building, and we've seen this before. It's been regurgitated in the X-Files. I've talked to numerous people. In fact, Karen Wilkinson, in her book Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, she talks about this, and Karen has come on the show and talked about it. Karen, of course, was an abductee, and she's seen this. How many abductees do we have to talk to before we realize there's a breeding program going on? And why should that surprise us as Christians when Jesus warns us it'll be like the days of...
I saw that, Bond. I thought, I wonder if that's a Nordic. Okay, fair enough, fast.
Noah. What differentiates the days of Noah is the breeding program. These are not the godly line of Seth and the hoochie mamas of Cain. This was inserted in the 3rd and 4th centuries. It becomes, and you remember, the entire Bible goes dark for 1,000 years. Think about that. We go into the dark ages where you can't read the Bible until Gutenberg comes up with his printing press, right? Around 1436, somewhere in that time frame. And even then, Tyndale was burned at the stake for translating the Bible in English. I'm not making this stuff up. So the whole thing is like clone. Genesis 3:15, the seed of the dragon, the offspring of the dragon will be at war with the offspring of the woman. That's the entire Bible. Get that? Get the exegesis of Genesis 3:15 right, the Bible opens up. If you don't, good luck with that. Daniel 2:43, thousands of years after that first incursion, because there are multiple incursions, when the fallen angels come down and mix their seed, and only 8 people survived. That's the ark, that's the flood. So now it's thousands of years later, an angel appears to the prophet Daniel and says, seal up the words of this book, Daniel. And 2:43. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. The word cleave, I've told you this a million times, but I keep repeating it because new people come here and, what's all this about? It's right there in the biblical prophetic narrative. Their seed will mingle with the seed of men. Who are they? It's not men. So who are they? Who are they? Winnie the Pooh and company? I don't think so. This is why Genesis 3:15 is paramount to our discussion. This is not demonic delusion. These are not phantoms or wisps. These are offspring of the fallen angels. And for the life of me, I don't understand why people don't get that. Because The pre-incarnate Jesus, the theophany in the Garden of Eden, proclaims to the dragon, your seed, your offspring will be at war with the offspring of the woman. So is that all allegory? I don't think so. Not for a minute. So there's the first shot, and then of course the camera pans back, and we see 4 vials with different. Well, they're all hybrid entities in different stages of development. And we talked about this, believe it or not, in our film on cattle mutilations, which is number 6, I believe. 4 is abductions, 5 is crop circles, 6 is on the cattle mutilations. I want to thank Chuck Sikowski for helping with that film. He was instrumental. And if you want to go see more about Chuck, UFOnut.com. UFOnut. Spend some time, go over there. It's an incredible site, and Chuck has been into all things cattle mutilation for decades. In my opinion, he's the go-to guy to go for it. So here's the deal. In our film on cattle mutilations, we know, and we posit that the woman who is abducted, and we talk about this in the book, Runs of Disclosure. In fact, I'm hopping all around like a frog in a hot plate, but you got to bear with me. There's so much information. So on Fox News, this is Bret Baier. You can't get a more stand-up guy than Bret Baier, for crying out loud, right? And he starts off leading with this very bizarre story. Some women who are taken aboard UFOs find themselves pregnant. That's the whole point of Karen's book, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. That's the whole point of it. And here's the deal, folks, and you got to think about this. You got to understand that this goes right back into the Genesis 3:15 narrative. Daniel 2:43, their seed will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not cleave to them. What are we looking at here? So all that to say that the breeding program exists, and in our film on cattle mutilations, we drew some conclusions, which to the best of my knowledge, and I could be wrong here, we were the first people, Bill Zimmerman, my business partner, and myself were the first researchers, filmmakers to break this story. And it's basically this. The blood is drained from the cow. We know from the American Medical Association that cow's blood can be used in human transfusion. That's a medical fact. So we know that. That's number 1. Number 2, body parts are taken from the cow. Uteruses, sex organs, udders, eyeballs, ears, tongues, the flesh from around the jaw. What are they doing? They're creating artificial wombs. Bovine blood can be used in human transfusion. AMA approved, American Medical Association approved. So we know that, and that's a fact, indisputable fact. So there it is. And here in this clip where you see Johnson and the military guy in front of him, and they're looking at the vats with the hybrids. And that's exactly what I believe. There is a breeding program going on. Karen talks about it in her book. Bret Baier breaks the story on Fox News. What are we supposed to do with that? So this just all that about Valiant Thor to come up with this. This is 11/16/24, Commander Thor update. I have no idea of whether this is some 25-year-old kid in his basement, his parents' basement, internet savvy, creating these blog posts. I have no idea. But I will read this to you because it really piqued my interest, and I want to thank the woman who sent it to me. Thank you so much. This is what the alleged Commander Thor says. Have to get back on the ground to join my families. To my point, top brass around the world know of us, where we come from and what we are doing. We don't seek recognition. We are here for eradication purposes of all combined evil and to help save humanity. The intelligence I just received is that total disclosure of myself and my light-beam families will happen under the Trump administration. This is good news for all humanity who know that we are here and out there. The problem going forward is going to be with the extremely religious humans. Underline that, read that sentence again. The problem going forward is going to be with the...
And there's the truth of all Valiant Thor.
Extremely religious humans. It may shatter their lives. Disclosure will start with all the records of my ET families that have been hidden from humanity under the Vatican. Watch for that in the near future and then prepare yourself for the massive amounts of information that will follow. So let's circle back to that again. The problem going forward is going to be with the extremely religious humans. It may shatter their lives. Well, what if we're not here? Okay? And this is why I do what I do, because disclosure is coming. It's already happening in the halls of Congress. That's why the book, Realms of Disclosure. That's why it's so important. And by the way, it's an interactive book. Shape, it's Black Friday today. So, when I'm doing this, so it's an interactive book. And runsuofdisclosure.com is where we post the UFO updates, all the indexes, all the.
Gee, that's a name I haven't heard for a long time. Tracy Lords. She was a porn worker that worked underage, if I remember correctly.
Links that are in the footnotes are there. It's all there. So, it's an interactive book. And you can stay abreast of what I think is another rung as we go up the ladder to full
Mom, you don't even hear it when you're in the lounge room. So don't let it worry you.
Who knows who this really is? So let's continue. Watch for that in the near future and then prepare yourselves for the massive amounts of information that will follow. And so it is. I'm Commander Thor, aka Valiant Thor, and this is my post on my Telegram. Love and strength I wish for all humanity, and may God bless and protect you and your families at all times. Sorry I had to be brief, just wanted to give those who still aren't convinced of myself and my families a head start on what's coming. And it goes on from there, but that's basically it. So the reason why I bring this up is because in our track, which we have right here, and I want to thank Brad Myers for helping put this together. And Brad basically tied into our ministry with this track, and we've got thousands of them. And when you order something, Peggy usually puts 2 or 3 of them in with the order so you can hand them out. If you want 40 or 50 of them, then that's another story. You gotta pay for them. But I digress. So here's the deal, folks. This comes from Barbara Marciniak, Bringers of the Dawn. And what's important to this fits right in with what Valiant Thor is saying. And I will read the quote from Bringers of the Dawn first, then I'll circle back to Commander Thor. Then I'll tell you a story that came across my desk through Brendy Wells a few years ago. So here we go. One example of this, the idea of communication by so-called extraterrestrials. So one example can be found in Bringers of the Dawn, Teachings from the Pleiadians by Barbara Marciniak. She is what I would call a new age channeler. So we are forbidden to channel, open ourselves up through automatic writing or step out of the way so an entity can come through us. We're not equipped to do that. We're forbidden to do it. So with all due respect to Barbara, I disagree with her that these are not the Pleiadians. How do you know whether these entities coming through you are benevolent or malevolent? You don't, in my opinion. And Barbara's welcome to come up here and cross swords in a friendly way. We won't disparage her. She can believe what she wants to believe. But I'm just quoting what's in her book. So here it is. This is the channel information allegedly from the Pleiadians. Do I believe it's from the Pleiadians? Absolutely not. It's either demonic or fallen angel inspired. But that's my view. That's my view, and Barbara's entitled to hers. Here we go. We are here. We are the Pleiadians. Humanity is learning a great lesson at this time. The lesson is, of course, to realize your Godhood. So right there, I take umbrage with that. Most of you will do the same. I will never be God. We are too. God is God, all-knowing, all-seeing, existed from times past, the Ancient of Days, and I am that I am. I will never be God. I am made in His image and likeness. I'm a sinner saved by grace. Thank you, Jesus. Without Jesus, I would die in my sins. If you're watching right now, I'll go down the rabbit trail here. If you're watching right now and you don't know Jesus, you think you know Him, but you don't know Him, then you don't know Him. Then you just don't know Him. If you think you know Him, if you think you know who He is, but there's no personal relationship, then you don't know Him. You need to ask Him in your heart. He will change your life.
Yeah.
You will die in your sins, just like I would die in my sins if I had not accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior 44 years ago. It's not that hard. He loves you. The door is open. All you need to do is knock. I should say, He's at the door. You have the door to your heart. All you need to do is knock the door and open the door. He will come in, and the rest is history. Okay, let's go on. So there is a potential for many people to leave the planet in an afternoon. The people who leave the planet during a time of Earth changes do not fit here any longer, and they are stopping the harmony of Earth. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, this is from a completely different source than Commander Thor, isn't it? And aren't they saying the same thing? Talking about extremely religious humans. I think I would be classified as an extremely religious human. But here's the deal, folks, I'm not religious, not at all. You know, I don't go and burn candles and sit in front of paintings or statues or any of this stuff. I don't do that. I have a personal relationship with the risen Savior. Does that make me religious? You decide. So the next slide, this is real interesting. I get this email from Brendy Wells, John B. Wells' wife. I was privileged to attend the wedding between John B. and Brendy. That was really a fun day. And I'll be on the show, I think, sometime in December, talking about drug disclosure. Brendy's at the office, and a phone call comes in. And this man identifies himself as Valiant Thor. And this is what Brendy tells me. The entire room turned green. The entire room turned green. And time seemed to slow down. Now, how does that happen? How does that happen? The link is below. You can go and see this. It's on our Rumble account. My interview with L.A. Marzulli, that's Brendy. Check it out. You're going to want to look at that. It's unbelievable. So Valiant Thor told Brendy that he had a very important message from John B. Wells. He gave Brendy his phone number, and when John B. called it, nothing was there. I got the phone number also, and I called it, and nothing was there. So it's high strangeness. It's definitely high strangeness. And the reason why I bring up Valiant Thor, because Brendy had an encounter with it just a few years ago, and here it is again. So we keep an eye on this stuff. Why? Because in my opinion, and I talk about this in Non Disclosure, also 9 and 10, the last two DVDs in our 10-box set. This is the coming great deception. These are not friendly ETs, space buggers, light beings who are here to save humanity. They are here to create what I call the coming great deception, which is a phrase that I coined decades ago when the book Nephilim, The Truth Is Here, came out in 1999. Did I know Brad Myers then? I don't know. What's interesting is Brad and I have coalesced with this track, What is the Truth? And Brad and I have talked about this because that's a phrase that he came up with too, way back in the 90s, the coming great deception. Did both of us come up with that at the same time? It's possible that the Holy Spirit did that. But after all these decades of sort of knowing each other on the periphery, now we've coalesced, come together in our track, What is the Truth? And again, I want to thank Brad for his support and for creating this wonderful, wonderful track. So, you know, folks, there's the Christmas store is open. It's all there, lamarzulli.com, lamarzulli.com. We've got some specials, great deals, the best deals. And, you know, why not give gifts that will have an impact on those who watch the DVDs or read the book? Because they will have an impact, I promise you. We will be at Branson. We are leaving next Tuesday. We'll be flying into Oklahoma City, and from there we drive to Branson, of course. After that, on Monday, I'll be shooting a program with Joe Horn and the gang over at Skywatch. That's a great honor for us, absolutely. And keep us in prayer. A lot of traffic.
Okay, we'll do some ACTV. Oh, it didn't load. Hang on. Man. Hang on, guys. It didn't load. Okay, got it.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. As always, it's my great honor to welcome each and every one of you to another episode of the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, the Trump Cipher. What does the year 2025 have to do with Donald Trump, Bible prophecy, and the ushering in of the final end time period? Find out tonight on the Midnight Ride, and you don't have to wait very long because we are now
live. What's up, guys? It's so good to be live with you guys here from the Pearson Barn. And man, tonight's broadcast is one of those broadcasts I wish I didn't even have to do. As a researcher, you start to come across all of these things, and you see lines starting to be connected when you just start drawing connections, and it's very seldom do you have so many dots. And so this is kind of a continuation of the episode that we did a couple weeks ago, the Trump Cipher. And it didn't mean to be, it was actually about 2025, but it just seems that Donald Trump is so interwoven into most of these prophecies slash mystical ideas, and it's just mind-blowing. So I'm excited to do this broadcast tonight. So let us know how you guys are doing. How's your week been, David?
been very good, John. Been very good.
Awesome. So tonight, guys, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Links are in the descriptions over there, but you guys can check out all of the just beautiful things that they have to offer. Also, just check out our websites, nystv.org, new episodes of the Book of Enoch video commentary, also other documentaries, and then fojcradio.com, where you can find a culmination of over 40 years of David and Donna's work with FOJC Radio. And so make sure you guys check that out. David, do you guys have any broadcasts that you guys have coming up this week?
Of course we do. Sunday night, 8 p.m. Central Time on our FOJC Radio Rumble channel. Porky's Dirty Little Secrets continued. What's really going on with our food supply, what we need to know about it. So join us at 8 p.m. Central on our FOJC Radio Rumble channel.
Very cool, David. So if you don't have anything else, I guess we can get started on the ride. Are you ready?
Let's ride.
All right, guys. So we're going to get started here. And I just wanted to say that if you missed this episode, the Trump Cipher, which was 2 weeks ago, I suggest that
we watch that,
after
guys.
Watching this, that you go check it out, because it will add many dots to what I'm going to be talking about here tonight. And I want to read a couple scriptures to get us started, because I think that it's important that we understand that there are hidden things going on in the world that we're living in, and a lot of them are hidden in plain sight, and a lot of things are being revealed. So this is Luke 12:2-3. It says, "For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. Therefore, whatsoever ye have spoken in darkness shall be heard in the light, and that which ye have spoken in the ear in closets shall be proclaimed upon the housetops." And then in Luke 8:17, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." And when I see those things, it really, there's a chance that you're feeling either happy to hear these things, or that it makes you shiver to hear these things. And there's a group of people out there in the world that shiver when they hear these words that Jesus spoke here, because this is, I believe we're in that time period where this stuff is coming to pass, and we're starting to see it unfold in front of our faces. And so I'm excited to talk about this and to just bring it out to the table, because I'm not making any predictions, nor am I going to give my opinion on what all this means together, because I don't really honestly know, but I can see that there's so many connections here that it's really hard to pass up the opportunity to speak about these things. And so I titled this episode 2025 Things You Need to Know. As I started looking into 2025, I realized that there are very many indicators that this time period of 2025 is going to be an important year. And I'll explain those things throughout this broadcast. And there's everything that I'm going to be presenting tonight is very important, even down to the very last thing. So it was hard to kind of gauge it by, well, this is more important, so I'm going to do this here, or this is more important, because really all the way down to the end it is, I'm going to try not to go over an hour, because I know your guys' time is valuable, but I want to make sure that we get a full scope of a lot of these things. This could have easily be 2 or 3 broadcasts, so I'm going to get through this with you guys tonight. So the reason I looked into 2025, and we've done broadcasts speaking of this before, because of the Deagle site. There's a website, deagle.com, and this site is a culmination of intelligentsia that get together and they post what they believe the population of of all countries are going to be, GDP, etc. And they've been pretty much dead on for a very, very long time. Now, you can't find this on the website anymore, but I remember doing a broadcast in around 2021, 2022, speaking of this and having this screenshot, and there's a lot of other people that have spoken on this as well. You can find many topics broadcast, but if you look at a lot of these countries, I mean, it's a lot of people that listen are from some of these countries, but there's more. But the United States of America seems to drop 200 million people, so 68.5% population change in 2025. A lot of very high level people who you would be calling elites have said that this is when the great coaling is happening. There's something getting ready to take place. A lot of people have been talking about this and feeling this for a while, but this Deagle report made me want to look into 2025 a little bit more. I also saw a few reels that were going around where people would Google search all the different years, and there was all these different memes for that year. But when you go to 2025, there was nothing. It was just like it was blank for some reason or another. And so somebody that you guys should be familiar with, she actually took the reins for me for a couple weeks when I was out of town. And she also does a lot of Instagram stuff on Instagram. She does stuff on Instagram, and her name's Jillian. She did something about the show we're going to be doing tonight, and she actually is crazy because I saw this today after I've been doing this broadcast, and it's something that was brought to my attention as well, because a lot of you guys are this is going to ring a bell when you hear what she's saying here, and also with the clips that I'm going to play after that. So I'm going to play this, and we've also done shows on the Marine Kingdom not that long ago, speaking about the idea of the Nephilim coming from the water, and the fact that these water spirits and these water gods are the ones who form these nations, and how the Maritime Kingdom actually has control of the commerce and control of most of the world. It sits on many waters. So anyways, here's this video by Jillian. You guys check this out.
Marine Kingdom is rising, and if you believe in Jesus, you will pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you. Since November 6th, the media has been sparking with rumors that we are entering into a new golden age. And as soon as I heard that term, immediately the Holy Spirit grabbed me with discernment. Golden Age is described as the age that falls within the rule of Kronos, the god of time. Peace and harmony prevailed during this age. Humans did not have to work to feed themselves, for the earth provided food in abundance. They lived to very old age, but with a youthful appearance, and eventually died peacefully. Their spirits live on as guardians. He describes these men as daemons upon the earth. Similarities between the historical Golden Age and this new Golden Age with an upcoming incumbent presidency. It's very shocking. Additionally, the Golden Age is directly linked to the Age of Aquarius, which as of yesterday, November 19th, we entered into and will remain that way until 2043. And the Kabbalistic Zohar states that all celestial treasures and hidden riddles will be solved in the Age of Aquarius. Many occult beliefs, such as the New Age, also describe this as a new era that we are entering into that will unlock new knowledge, such as transhumanism or the Nephilim agenda. And this Nephilim agenda starts with the Marine Kingdom.
All right, so that's the video that she did. Very, very good video. It just kind of sums up a lot about this Age of Aquarius. I want to play one more video, David, and then I want to get comments from you before we move on to kind of the next section here. This video here is Donald Trump. We're going to play this real quick.
This will be America's new golden age. It's going to happen quickly, too, very quickly. Every problem facing us can be solved, but now the fate of our nation is in your hands.
All right, so that is that clip. And then this is Melania Trump walking out to the song Age of Aquarius, throwing up the V symbol, the Venus symbol, and it's very interesting. So here we go.
We're not sure why they picked this song. For Melania Trump's entrance, this astrological Taurus flashed a peace song.
So that's interesting too, because I was looking up at her astrological sign, which is something that they may point to mention. And for a certain period of time, Taurus is actually going to be within this Aquarius period. It's really interesting the way they phrase all this stuff. So everything they say has meaning, as we've talked about before. The elites very much so believe in the movement and the tracking of the stars. Just going back to
like
the ancient times when the Babylonians used the stars for every.
They did say he's been right about everything else, the Deagle report. These guys did say he's right about it.
Thing, including the king's decisions. They had their soothsayers and all of this. So, anyways, David, I'm going to leave this here for just a minute, and I want to get something. I know your brain's moving right now. I see the cogs turning in your mind right now. So I want to get some comments from you.
Well, words have meaning, and there's no doubt that the Trump agenda is tied to the term golden age, the age of Aquarius. There's so much hype and enthusiasm for Mr. Trump, and few of these people would ever consider, and especially the professed Christians now that are supporting Mr. Trump, few of them would even consider the fact that perhaps this might have a hidden agenda, that this really might be a nefarious age that is coming in. I think this could be a tremendous sucker punch.
Yeah, it could get really interesting, and I don't think
it's looking like that, isn't it? Trump's a sucker punch. It really is starting to look like that.
Now, I'm not saying that even Trump would even be aware of the lining up of all of these things, which I would assume that he is. He's a smart guy. I'm assuming that he has all the people around him that know all about this stuff and are able to point these things out. But this gets interesting. So in the video, Jillian mentioned Kronos. Now, the reason this all gets interesting is because we have a current sitting president who is a student of Kabbalah, also is, considered he was crowned in Jerusalem. If you guys saw the episode that we did on Trump before, you see that. And he's also on a coin, and he put the embassy of the United States in Israel. And so this aspect of Kronos makes it very interesting as well. I want to show you guys this. So as you guys can see, and this is even the oldest depictions of this hexagram, which is a six-sided star, goes to the celestial being Saturn here. Okay, so you see up here at the top, there's one traced here. This is where you get Metatron's cube. This is the six-pointed star, the cube, the black cube, and this Kronos and Saturn are actually the same exact entity. You see that in Judaism, also in Islamic worship, the black cube is a huge point of worship. It connects with the black and white Jehovah, the idea that Saturn is what a lot of people believe, that Saturn would be connected to Jehovah, the God of the Bible, which kind of goes to Gnosticism, where the idea of Yaldabaoth being a demiurge. But Saturn is, if you would believe what is written about him by the enemy, Saturn is this evil god that eats his children and is very much so connected to the god Jehovah. And this is why you see the Jews that have the black cube on their head when they do their rituals. This is why there's a journey to the cube in Mecca. This is something that there's several sites all over the world that have this black cube. And if you haven't noticed, one of the most wealthy, if not the most wealthy investment companies in the world, they're called BlackRock. So we have a lot of connections to Saturn in this presidency, in a lot of this. And if Saturn is believed by the Jews and by Trump and by others to be the God Jehovah, this would make a lot of sense why Saturn is deeply tied in to this. And also the God of time. And I'm going to have you comment to this picture here, David. This is Kronos, the God of time, Father Time, standing behind the Virgin. And as she's weeping here, mourning, explain in Freemasonry, Kronos, the God of time, David. You've talked about this before in broadcasts, and if you have any insights into this, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and this appears in almost every Masonic monitor of every state. And here we have the broken column in Freemasonry, and we have the widow here holding the leaf. And in Freemasonry, one of the designations of the Freemasonry is the widow's son. Is there no help for the widow's son is their grand hailing sign of distress. And the widow is specifically explained as Isis, the goddess. And just like the Isis and Osiris, Osiris in Freemasonry was the one that, and in the mystery religions, that his body was cut up into a lot of little pieces, and they recovered every part but one. And the phallus of Osiris, this represents the lost word of Freemasonry, according to Manly Palmer Hall. And in the specific Luciferian teachings, every one of the Freemasons is one of the sons of Isis. And Freemasonry is goddess worship among many, just rank paganism. But this represents, and of course, this before that, in the Babylonian, it was the woman weeping for Tammuz, and they're holding in her hand the symbol of the evergreen or the regeneration there in the right hand.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the most ancient depictions of the hexagram being used are in the Babylonians rituals, where they would draw two triangles, one upward facing, one downward facing, creating this hexagon. They would draw the circle around the hexagon and stand in the middle to do hexes, so that it would be protection sigil for them from these dark entities that they're doing. But it's interesting to me that Kronos, Saturn, this whole idea really, it didn't really dawn on me so much that that Saturn may in fact be who the synagogue actually worships. They may believe that this is Jehovah, and the Bible does say that many would go in error in their ways, thinking the stars and the celestial beings are gods. But there is something unique about Saturn, which a lot of people believe that hexagram and these rings are actually some way broadcasting reality to Earth, because these rings, they don't really understand how they work. If they're like an antenna of sorts, to where it's broadcasting, there seems to be a swirling mass going around, which makes Saturn unique and different in a lot of ways. So that's another reason I brought this up, because there's just something unique about Saturn.
There's a scientist, well, he's passed away now. He wrote the 1800s. Isaac Newton Vail was his name. Mm-hmm. And he wrote about and he documented from a lot of sources how that Kronos, Saturn, was the god that was worshipped in the antediluvian time, to whom child and human sacrifice was made to. Yeah. And his theory was, and it was a very good one, he expounds it in I have a couple of his books, was that the reason why that they called the god Saturn is that before the flood, that the earth had rings like Saturn, and that the vapor canopy we read about in the book of Genesis, when it says the windows of heaven were opened, he believed that they were rings and that they collapsed in a succession of time. And that was his theory, and he had a lot of stuff to back it up. I found it deeply fascinating.
It is fascinating, and that really kind of brings, there's this theory here, this fascinating theory that I heard. It kind of wouldn't say it backs up that theory, but it adds interest to it. So there are those that believe, in which you can see this in ancient texts, that Saturn was actually the original sun, because in the Babylonian Greek text they call it Helios, Ra, Sol, and also Shamash and Helios in the Greek. And so this is what it was called originally, and then it kind of transferred from Saturn to the sun that we have now, which I don't know if this is biblically sound or not, but I do know that in the New Age, in the New Time, in the Scripture, it talks about the sun being gone, and that God is actually the sun sitting there, and it will be the light for us. Like, so a new light source is attached with a new age. And I don't know if this could tie into Velikovsky's idea and all of this, but there's some interest there as far as I'm concerned.
And most definitely, Velikovsky wrote about how that what we would refer to the planet Mars and Venus were originally traveling asteroids, and that was he taught what has been called catastrophism, which I would agree with. That instead of the changes in the Earth happening over millions and millions of years, that this happened because of catastrophes, and a lot of these were because of the erratic movement of the bodies in the second heaven. And there's gobs of text to where the sky, as was described by the Egyptians and the Babylonians, is not the same that we see today. Things are out of place, and Saturn being one of them that they all mention. And you know, the idea that these were just a bunch of dumb bumpkins that didn't know what they were doing, I can't subscribe to that. Yeah. They were very meticulous and very intelligent in the study of the heavenly luminaries. So I think there's something to that. I really do.
And I think it's really interesting to me too that they ascribe the golden age where people didn't have to work for food, because we know that would have to be after the fall of man, right? Because after the fall of man, after Adam and Eve sinned, they had to work for their food from then on. That was part of the curse. And so this idea that Kronos or Saturn was the god before this fall is interesting to me, because obviously the texts about Kronos from the pagan standpoint are very negative, right? Saturn is considered this ape of a man that eats his own children and just like very ruggish, thuggish. But if you really think about it, is it possible that the reason that they treat him so badly in their texts is because, as always, they're against the possible idea of God the Father, and maybe this is possibly where there could be a throne at. I mean, there's all these theories out there that just go through my mind. So,
and you think about it, before the fall of man, they dwelt in eternity, if you will.
Yeah.
There was no time. And the book of Revelation says that when the Lord returns, it says time will be no more.
Yeah.
So time is something that's unique to our realm of existence. God dwells in a realm where there is no time.
Yeah. And he also says, and he separates the beginning from the end as far as time goes. And so there's it's just interesting.
It's very deep, mind-blowing concepts. Yeah. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He can stand at the beginning of time and at the end of time at the same time.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm going to play another clip that's interesting. Now, I'm just going to play it and then we'll talk about it. How about that? Here we go.
The ancient Essenes, the inhabitants of Qumran. Now, lots of people, they know the Essenes from the Dead Sea Scrolls that were discovered there in the 1940s. What they don't know, and by the way, this has only been unearthed in the last 50 years. Archaeologists have also recovered prophecies that the Essenes made, and even material that illustrates who the Essenes were. 150 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, the Essenes began prophesying about the first advent of the coming of the Messiah. They said that he would come at a time when a king named Herod would be a king and he would turn evil. They said he would die in the year 32 AD, which is what scholars believe exactly happened. They said he will die not only for Jewish people, but he will be sacrificed for the Gentiles as well, and give birth to an age of grace that would extend for a period of 2,000 years. The list literally goes on and on. We're going to produce a documentary film in 2021 about all of this. But why am I bringing this all up now? Because they also prophesied this, that mankind, now this was over 2,000 years ago, these highly accurate prophets called the Essenes who lived in Qumran, they predicted that mankind will enter its final age. Guess when? In the year 2025. There are a massive amount of indicators that 2025 is a pivotal year that the world needs to be paying attention to.
Now, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff written in that book that Tom Horn. In fact, I haven't even read it, but I know he's got a very dispensationalist outlook, etc. But the idea that 2025 is even mentioned in Essene prophecies is something interesting to me. I know that another book was written about the lost or hidden Qumran prophecies by Josh Peck, which I'd be interested to read further. If anybody else has any ideas on these prophecies or can point me to exactly which ones they are, I'd be very interested. But I wanted to include that because actually Tom Horn, you've got this book over there, David. He wrote a book. If you'd hold it up, it's called Zeitgeist 2025. And so Tom Horn believed, based off of what I could understand about what he believed, and let me pull this slide up here. He believed, then I'm just going to read his quote here. It says, assuming for the moment that I am right, and that the asteroid Apophis is the biblical wormwood, and therefore 2029 represents a time around the middle of the Great Tribulation period when the trumpet judgment begins, Monday, October 13th, 2025. So he even put a date down there. Would be the approximate start date of the 7 years of the tribulation foreseen in Scripture, Revelation 7:14, Daniel 12:1, and this is from his book, also The Lost Prophecy of Qumran and the Return of Old Saturn's Reign. So I didn't realize this, but he also connected Saturn into this as well. David, I don't know, you've got the book there. Have you read it? And if you have, do you have any quotes from it that could add to what we're talking about here?
Well, I have Mr. Horn's book, Wormwood, which he believes that the asteroid Apophis is going to come in the middle of the tribulation period. And Mr. Horn, being a dispensationalist, he's going to look at the material that I would, and going to come to vastly different conclusions because he's looking at it through the lens of dispensationalism, the 7-year tribulation period, pre-trib rapture, and all of the things which I reject. Also rejecting the heliocentric cosmology and NASA. You know, these calculations are based upon NASA statistics, which, you know, I call NASA's not a straight answer. So my view of NASA isn't very benevolent either. So I yet remain to be shown that that is in the Qumran prophecies. I'm going to have to be from Missouri here. I'm going to have to see it point in line, and I haven't seen it point in line yet. So at this point, I'm just going to have to say I remain skeptical. Now, I do think, and I addressed this in the show I did with Dan Badandi, that I do think there could be something to this Apophis, but I would lean toward believing that it's an entity, not an asteroid.
Yeah, because Apophis was the god of darkness and chaos that comes down. And, you know, it's interesting that he was willing to kind of put himself on the line for 2025 and for those dates. I'm interested to see what happens in 2025. There's another thing I want to read here about 2025. This is from the external
biggest year of our life coming up, 2025.
Of the hierarchy.
Biggest year in the world's life.
Now, this was written in 1957 by Alice Bailey, by formerly at the time Lucifer Trust Publishing Company, now called Lucas Trust Publishing Company. And Lucas Trust Publishing Company and the UN are very tightly connected. Lucas Trust endorses the UN very heavily. And something you have to know about the UN as well, they have a base, I can't remember exactly what they call it, but equivalent to watchers on top of Mount Hermon on that is where their base is. So there's a lot of connections with the UN, Lucas Trust, Lucifer Trust, And this, in this book, written and published in 1957, written much earlier than that, it actually speaks of the year 2025. And I'm going to read the two references that I found in this book. And there may be more. If you've read this book and you can point me to more of these, then let me know. So I'm going to read this first one here. This is in page 363. And just actually a little bit more background on what the externalization of the hierarchy actually is. So this hierarchy is an invisible hierarchy they deem as the masters, like the masters of the Great White Lodge that is in the sky. And these masters, the head of this mastership is actually considered Christ according to the externalization of the hierarchy. And they would convene every 100 years. And there is a time period when they will externalize and once again present themselves to humanity and to mankind. And as of right now, according to this book, they have men set up in place, great teachers, all of these different people set up all over the world to bring in this agenda. And so this is on page 363. It says, I have made this practical application and this immediate illustration of teaching Annit, glamour, illusion, and Maya because the whole world problem has reached a crisis today, because its clarification will be the outstanding theme of all progress, educational, religious, and economic until 2025 AD. Now we're going to go again on page 530 of this book, and I'm going to read a paragraph and a half here. Really, the whole chapter is interesting. It says, thus a great and new movement is proceeding, and taking a tremendous increased interplay and interaction is taking place. This will go on until AD 2025. During the years intervening between now and then, very great changes will be seen taking place. And at the great General Assembly of the Hierarchy, held as usual every century, in 2025, the date in all probability will be set for the first stage of the externalization of the hierarchy. The present cycle from until that date is called technically the stage of the forerunner. It is a preparatory in nature, testing in its methods, and intended to be revelatory in its techniques and results. You can see, therefore, that Cohen's masters, initiatives, world disciples, and aspirants affiliated with the hierarchy are all at this time passing through a cycle of great activity. And it talks about a Messiah type figure entering the stage, etc. And so all of this work that has been going on behind the scenes culminates at 2025, and then we have this age of Aquarius, this new thing that takes place, and this is this book in general is a book that very much so is the world leaders are invested in seeing come to pass. Even if the prophecies aren't correct, they would love to see this 2025 thing come to pass. David, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Well, it's really amazing that Alice Bailey, who is the queen of the New Age movement, as connected as anyone can, here prophesies that 2025 is their year, when their guys are going to show up and take over, if you will. And it's also interesting that this golden age on the right-wing conservatives, they also say this is going to begin in 2025. I would just pose the ridiculous question, could it be that they're one and the same? Could it be that this agenda and this movement coming in could be the same one that was spoken of by Miss Bailey?
Well, we're going to see a little bit more about that agenda here in a minute once we get kind of into it. But David, you've done a lot of shows about the Theosophy, about Alice Bailey, for instance. You actually just gave me another book here today by these people because you had an extra one. So tell me more about their idea of what Christ is and what this Messiah figure is. Before we go further, I'd like to kind of understand, because I haven't read all of their literature, I've read some. What do they see as the Christ? Because it seems like, from what I read in this book, there's this tendency for them to say that Christ is the same Christ that's in the Bible, but then there's also this different names that they give him, almost like he's an avatar.
Yeah.
So explain that to me, please.
Yeah, they believe in the manifestation of the avatars, and they have many that they look to, Kutfumi, and many that they speak of as people, and like Maitreya, that actually live in physical bodies on the earth that are hundreds of years old. Comte Saint Germain was another one that was in the court of Louis XIV. And it's just really amazing how that these people can think that the Christ is not Jesus Christ, but it's a person in the New Age concept that achieves Christ consciousness. They're all Christ. It's the New Age principle that all people have that spark of divinity within them. And this is their basic belief there.
Okay, so they would believe in more of a universalist idea of achieving Christhood rather than Christ being the specific one who came to do this.
Yeah, they absolutely reject the biblical idea that Jesus Christ is the virgin-born Son of God, died upon the cross for our sins. They believe that divinity resides within all of humanity, and that the problem is ignorance, lack of gnosis, that if you just realize that you are God and through occult practices come to a spiritual realization of that, you can achieve this Christ consciousness.
And it's interesting that they use these terms, externalization of the hierarchy, because you spoke earlier about, America and the symbolism surrounding this hexagram and these spirits, but you have this kind of dynamic in Washington, D.C., where you have the phallic symbol, and then you have the womb as the Capitol building, and you have this raising of Osiris ceremony that takes place in every inauguration. And it's interesting to me that this one in particular that's going to be going down coincides with their idea of the possible bringing in of this Messiah and this whole ritual, and then their idea of binding these 72 spirits in order to be able to take full control. It's just mind-blowing to me. So they would be right on with that, because in their idea, the Messiah is whoever tends to raise at that particular time to be the anointed one for that movement.
Yeah. And just like you spoke of there in the apotheosis of George Washington, which we've all seen, of the 72 stars and the gods, Washington is seen as a resurrected god up there floating around the Capitol roof there with all Zeus and all the other gods up there. And of course, in Washington's tomb, the old joke, who's buried in Grant's tomb? Well, who's buried in Washington's tomb? The answer is not Washington, nobody, because he was moved there from there to Mount Vernon. There's a message there. The grave's empty, he's risen. He's up on the top of the Capitol Dome. And every American president is seen in a continuation of that in the eyes of the occultist. And just like in the writings of Manly Palmer Hall, the secret destiny of America, they've been talking for a long time. It's America's secret destiny to one day have the man show up, and that ain't the man that believers are talking about.
Well, I mean, we boil it down to America's foundations, and we did a show, I don't even remember what it was called now, but it kind of broke a lot of that down, all the way down to the height of certain things, etc. But when people think about who formed our framework, like Ben Franklin, who was a member of the Hellfire Club, they found human sacrifice had been taking place underneath his house when they went to renovate his location. You have John Adams, who was a deist of sort, but he hated Christianity. All of these people were part of the fabric of starting our country. So this gets really interesting.
It really does. My goodness, anyone that has ever read Thomas Paine wrote the pamphlet that really ignited the common person to get on board with the revolution. He was about as virulent a Christ hater as you could ever imagine. He was rankly blasphemous.
Yeah, it's when you really look at the history of some of this, this is amazing. Now, what I'm getting ready to show you is a video of a Hopi tribesman, I believe a chief, and he is going to be talking about the prophecy
Thanks, Doll.
of the man in the red hat. And I'm going to play the whole thing because I thought it's very interesting, especially considering we're entering 2025 and what he's talking about here and how, you know, when the show we did about Donald Trump, could he be the Antichrist? And I'm going to say it again because there's always some guy on there that's like, you know, you said this, and look, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we did a show about it. It's interesting. There's always that possibility. But considering that, let's check out this video here.
I was wondering about who are those people that's going to purify this land? How are they going to do it? So they explained to me, we have a gourd rattle that we still use in our ceremony.
That's
And that
Aboriginal.
gourd rattle represents the world. And one side, this figure is on the drawing. And another one is on this side. There'll be a gourd rattle. We still use them. The one old man told me, take a look. Whoever have this symbol in this world, going to shake us up 2 times. And it just came to me quickly. And I wondered, what nation ever someone something similar to this one? Because they will be very intelligent people. They're going to produce many inventions of all types. They're going to be so powerful that they're going to use that to shake us up real hard. And they're going to almost destroy themselves. But later, out of it, a new generation is going to rise. This time they will know what to do in the right manner, for the right purpose. Then around it, the sun symbol. Those people are very intelligent people that have that symbol. They have produced many things, invented many things. And they become powerful. And they also shake us up 2 times. And the second time, with the help of another. These 2 have shook us up 2 times real hard, warning us. And they almost destroy themselves. But out of it, a new generation is coming, stronger, much better equipment, everything, powerful things going to be developed by these 2 people. Then the third one that will finally bring about purification of this land in this continent would be a man with red cap, red hat, or red cloak. Now, we do not know who that nation is or what people, but they say those people will have a large population and they will also have much scientific inventions of all types. Very powerful nation going to be. So once you start moving, these others 2 will join him with all that power and might. The 3 of them going to come here quickly together, and nothing can stop them. This time they're going to come right here. They say even they're going to come here so fast they come here for breakfast. Now this is nice clear day today, calm, everything nice. Tomorrow morning maybe we get up at breakfast time and the whole sky will be darkened. Old man said, I don't know what will cause it darkening of the sky. Then he said the people will be raining from the sky. And in one day they're going to get control of this whole continent. And they're going to cut us up into 4 sections. And they're going to look for a leader that still remains, a native leader, still remaining to the spiritual path. And to him, they're going to gather people here to him. And they will say, now,
Yeah, they're Hoppies. This is a Hoppy prediction.
these people, I gave them the religion and the duty to produce things, to invent things, and to become popular people. When they came here, what have they been doing to you? Now, suppose he was the last chief still remaining in this area. They will ask him, and they will say, well, those people have destroyed my people. They have taken care of and taken everything from my people, land, rivers and hunting rights and everything that I used. They just took it away from me against my opposition.
Yeah.
Then those that had done that, what we call purification, would be the real wicked people. People have taken advantage of them in that manner. These figures had no heads on them. That would be their supreme punishment. Because right in daylight, right in public, they're going to weed out those bad people and they're going to chop their heads off, they say. And that is what they said will happen. That's first punishment. Then they say, what about these people here? And he will look at them and said, well, at least they make an attempt to help us. They did try to do something to help us protect it. And they will pull out all those people. They will know you can't get away. They said they'll have some means of catching you. And they will bring those people. There'll be a lot of those people. Then they will say, look, you have disturbed this land like these people. You have polluted their rivers and land and everything. Now you go and clean it up. And whoever survives out of that will be able to stay with the leader here. Then they'll say, what about these people? These people have really suffered, been persecuted, laughed at, they've been punished, and they've been beat up also because they really stood by me. And they will pull out those people.
Went straight in the
And they will
hand.
be close to him and they will be respected. That is what they said will happen at this period by the people that has this symbol and the man with red cap and red cloak. They will come from each direction, from sun, where the sun rises. And they will come here quickly. And they will have something to paralyze all man-made machinery. Everything come to a standstill. All power will go out. All man-made machinery come to a standstill. And we will be helpless. Then they just come and take it over. And this is what they will happen to by those people that are coming from the east direction. Now, if those people are commissioned by the Great Spirit to do that for the Great Spirit, if we can't clean it ourselves here, and if they fail, then...
So I'm going to go ahead and just stop it there because he just kind of continues on to talk about some other things. But a very interesting Hopi prophecy. And of course, there's other Hopi prophecies that are also really interesting. And we find some very interesting origin stories as well from the Hopi prophecy about ant people living underground, etc. And so, David, there's a couple things that stood out to me in there. One being the idea of these men that were from the before order coming down out of the sky, which reminds me of UFOs, UAPs, the kind of stuff we're seeing now. And then there's that connection to this externalization of the hierarchy, because in the intro and then the opening sections, they were saying that they are approaching Earth, getting closer and closer, and they'll start making themselves known closer to the time. And I would assume that if we're talking about UAPs, UFOs, and this kind of activity, that this could be what we're seeing referred to here, because you've talked about that technology having to do with people that, to put it in a way that, won't mess with anything, but that bore that symbol that he showed there. So anyways, do we expand on that a little bit?
Well, there's the obvious connection of the swastika, or the backward swastika, which would, of course, immediately make us think of Germany and Operation Paperclip. And it's interesting that, the paperclip scientists, we had several thousand, 3,000 to 5,000 with the families coming to paperclip, and an equal amount went into Russia. And that technology developed not only the American weaponry and super weapons and exotic weapons of that type, but also in the Russian. And what seems to be the constant theme is our people are going to show up. And, we could definitely connect that with the UFO. And it's interesting with the ant people in the marvelous underground adventures of Baron von Trump and his dog Bulger. They went down through the giant well, and what do they say? They saw ant people. Of course they did. They saw ant people down there. So it could be, and the theme is the hierarchy is going to externalize itself. We're going to see real flesh and bone people take over and rule. Now, it could be that it's going to come down in some kind of an ET scenario, or it could be that they're already here.
Yeah, and a lot of people are even saying too that not just based off the people that are already in our borders, but that a lot of this stuff is coming. They're coming from the ocean, which kind of goes back to the water kingdom thing, the age of Aquarius, ushering in the water kingdom type activity. There's just so much there, and then this idea of the red hat, and I kind of just looked into a little bit about what does red signify in Freemasonry, what does it signify red hats in general, and one of the most common things that I found on the search was red hats, and as far as computer technology goes, so like this kind of made me think of Q, etc. But a red hat hacker, or I'm just going to show you guys this here. Red hats are often characterized as vigilantes. Like white hats, red hats to disarm black hats. Black hats are the bad guys. But the two groups' methodologies are significantly different. Rather than hand a black hat over to authorities, red hats launch aggressive attacks against them to bring them down, often destroying the black hat's computer and resources. In Freemasonry, red is considered to be a very important color in Freemasonry as it represents energy, vitality, and life force. It is believed to represent the power of God as well as the power of man. Red also stands for purity and innocence as well as justice and truth. In Masonic ceremonies, red is often seen as a reminder of the bloodshed by those who bravely fighting for freedom and justice. The use of red in Masonic rituals can also be seen in decorations and symbols. The most common symbol associated with Freemasonry is the square and compass, which are both bordered with red to signify strength, courage, and faithfulness. Other Masonic symbols, such as the all-seeing eye, are also usually surrounded by a deep red border or made entirely from this powerful hue to represent vigilance and strength against evil forces. And this is from esotericfreemason.com. So there's this idea of battling against the dark forces. And I think that if you look at, if a lot of people, when they heard that red hat, they're thinking, man, Trump wears a red hat. This seems to coincide. I think that his whole platform has been based off of draining the swamp, getting rid of the deep state, getting rid of the dark forces that are surrounding this stuff. So it's interesting to note that this is kind of the symbology of the red hat. Can you think of anything, David, the red hat, anything that rings a bell biblically or in esoteric literature that you can think of?
No, it would kind of, to me, in my mind, would be symbolic of revolution.
Yeah.
And red, well, you know, we've got the old bear, you know, with the Russian bear portrayed as red, and also red China. So there's a lot of symbolism there, but I don't know. It just remains a little ambiguous and elusive to where we can't really make a definitive call there.
One of the things in that Hopi prophecy that made me think of Russia as well, where it talks about the earth or being divided into 4 quarters in Revelation 20, when Gog and Magog, Gog being the principality that is over Magog, which Magog would be, most people would consider Russia, China, probably Turkey, all of those kind of eastern areas there. And he actually gains control over all 4 quarters of the earth to go to war against God's people during that time period. And that kind of brought something to my mind there when he said that the earth is divided into 4 quarters, and there's this one main chief who is given the power to bring all of them kind of together against these people that they deem to be the destroyers of the earth in this prophecy. So, all right, so I'm going to play this. This is going to the Project 2025. This is what a lot of people were talking about there for a while, and still actually talking about. I have a news clip to play that was just released less than 24 hours ago concerning Project 2025, which is interesting because it's a great follow-up to the video that I'm getting ready to play for you guys. So here we go.
the liberal state. This Project 2025 blueprint is backed by more than 100 conservative groups, and it is presented as a vision built by conservatives for conservatives. We asked the Heritage Foundation for an interview. In an emailed statement, a spokesman said the Project 2025 team is unavailable at the moment for an interview. Now let's go back to Schedule F and stay tuned here because it is complicated, but it is at the very heart of all this. Schedule F was an executive order signed by Donald Trump in 2020 in his last months as president. He never acted on it because he lost the election soon after. But had he actioned it, Schedule F would have given him presidential control over the rights and protections for tens of thousands of civil servants, allowing him to hire and fire them at will. During Trump's first term, he often grew frustrated with federal government employees. He felt they were preventing him from enacting his policy agenda. If they were guardrails, he saw them as barriers.
In 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
The order aims to replace government employees with political appointees, those loyal to the president. So a president who takes all this up could fire scientists calling for greater action on climate change or birth control.
Good.
Replace them with loyal, even unqualified employees who would roll back or dismantle existing policies and without congressional approval. Reinstating
never saw you there.
priority for Project 2025 and for Donald Trump.
It's my plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all. And corruption it is. First, I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively.
And this is where Project 2025 comes back in with their conservative LinkedIn.
March into office and bring a new army of aligned, trained, and essentially weaponized conservatives ready to do battle against the deep state.
The plans have become so controversial that Donald Trump has tried to distance himself from the project. After months of Democrats sounding the alarm, he's realized maybe that it's become a political liability. And so he's claimed to know nothing of Project 2025 or the people behind it. But how credible is that, really?
Trump and Roberts know each other well. Here they are on a private jet together in 2022. Trump has spoken at heritage events. Listen to this endorsement.
With Kevin and the staff, and I met so many of them now, I took pictures with among the most handsome, beautiful people I've ever seen. I didn't like that picture. If you could lose that picture, please, would you, Kevin? But this is a good, no, he says, I won't do that. This is a great group, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America, and it's coming.
Yet, at a rally in Michigan this summer, he said this.
Like some on the right, severe right, who came up with this Project 25, and I don't even know. I mean, some of them I know who they are, but they're very, very conservative, just like you have. They're sort of the opposite of the radical left.
So there we are, two entirely contradictory statements by the same man about the same group.
I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it.
It does seem clear, though, that many of Project 2025's policies do overlap with Trump's official policy proposals called Agenda 47.
In a conversation with the tech billionaire Elon Musk on X, Trump said that he would dismantle the Department of Education if he wins the White House in November.
And what I'm going to do, one of the first acts, and this is where I need an Elon Musk, I need somebody that has a lot of strength and courage and smarts. I want to close up Department of Education, move education back to the states.
I think you're making a good point. That policy, for one, is included in this Project 2025.
On education, the handbook says that federal education policy should be limited and ultimately the Federal Department of Education should be eliminated. The president of the Heritage Foundation has praised what he sees as the dovetailing of Project 2025 and Trump's.
I don't mind getting rid of public education. They're the ones spreading the lefty agenda. Shut them down. Get rid of them.
Agenda 47, saying the overlap is tremendous. When asked for his reaction to Trump's dismissal of Project 2025, he said, well, I think that's the sign of a great leader who understands that he's in a terrific political news cycle. So no hard feelings from any of us at Project 2025 about the statement, because we understand that Trump is the standard bearer and he's making a political, tactical decision there. At least 140 people linked to Project 2025 served in some form in Trump's last administration. Reporters for two investigative organizations called Documented and ProPublica have obtained 14 hours worth of private training videos for Project 2025. They found that 29 of the 36 speakers in the videos have worked for Trump in some capacity.
Hello, my name is Jeff Small. I was a presidential appointee in the Trump administration.
I am a former political appointee in the Donald J. Trump administration.
I served as the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the Department of Homeland Security, and I was also a spokesman at the Department of Justice.
And you stayed until the final hour.
Shocking that I made it.
Yes. It's amazing.
The spin is that this is an agenda overwhelmingly popular among conservatives.
These rallies among Trump's base, many of the policies seem popular enough, but beyond here, well, not so much. The question, unanswered for now, is whether Project 2025 really does form a blueprint for a Trump second term. If he wins, and it does, well then America will need to brace for fundamental political and societal change.
All right, so keeping in mind what he said there, Trump said about that, we're going to watch this video. This was just released less than 24 hours ago.
President and CEO of Media Matters. Angelo, voila. It turns out the Trump administration is full of Project 2025 people. Tom Homan, his pick for Border Czar, was a contributor. John Ratcliffe, Trump's nominee for CIA director, contributor. Brendan Carr, Trump's pick to run the Federal Communications contributor, wrote the chapter of the FCC. Pete Huckstrup, his pick for Canada,
Hang on, guys.
And Stephen Miller, his pick for Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, contributor, and Russ Vought, of course, obviously. And then I will add the person who put together this personnel database that he's putting together, John McEntee, also tied to it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why it's important to note that their denial didn't hold up and that they're beginning to implement this is that it's so much bigger than that policy book. Project 2025 was really the professionalization of MAGA, and it was designed to sort of, squeeze as much juice out of the orange out of that first year, not to implement their policies, but to literally shock the system so that they have smooth runway after that, to basically subdue all and eliminate all of the safeguards and norms that would typically prevent or slow down or be speed bumps in sort of undermining democracy or misusing the government or all sorts of other things. And so this latest example is, you had the policy book, which is all of the ideas, the aspirations of Project 2025. So now we can use the validation that they're moving forward with it to figure out where they're going. And here's where they are. The other part of it was the personnel database. And it's not just the names that are going to be talked about in the news. It's going to be hundreds or thousands of individuals. And that was really always the tell, is that it didn't matter whether or not they disavowed Project 2025. The fact is, all the personnel that Trump could have hired were already part of that project. They had been pre-vetted. They had been determined where they'd be maximally slotted in. The personnel is policy, and those are going to be the people that implement it. And now tonight with the news about Russ Vought, it's worth noting that he wrote a piece of Project 2025 called The Playbook, which was designed to be kept private. It was the first 180 days look like. It's the compilation of all the executive orders, all the internal instructions for agencies, all the legal memos that are required to sort of legitimize or validate instructions. It is going to be the full-scale implementation of what everybody was talking about in the summer that they didn't want to happen, which was Project 2025.
So there you have it. So Project 2025 is very much a big part of what's going to happen. I haven't read the Project 2025. I think it's interesting. A couple of things that stand out to me is I remember a speech Donald Trump gave that calling all Christians to vote. He said, if you vote this time, you'll never have to vote again.
I remember he
fix
said
everything.
that.
You'll never have to vote again. This will be the time when you do that. Now, also, when I hear about this Heritage Foundation, I could be wrong in this, but I would assume that they're connected with the mandate, the 7 mountain mandate movement. I'm not 100% sure if they are or not, but it reminds me so much when you look in the Bible and you talk about the harlot that rides the beast and sits on the seven hills or the seven mountains. And it just reminds me so much of this group that kind of gets pulled into this. When you see this stuff, David, obviously on the outside, to me, when I look at this, if I didn't know better, if I didn't know that, or let's put it this way, if I didn't have my opinions, I would think this is great, because these people are Christian people. They're trying to push a certain agenda. They're trying to clean up the education system, which is something that has to happen. It has to happen. The education system is a place that I've been saying it for years. You know, when Trump first got elected, I didn't understand why he didn't change the education system, because we just keep breeding these consistent, and I'm not calling the kids failures, but failure of the system. The system's failed us in major ways, all the way from the bottom up. And so it sounds really good. The idea of making our money something great again sounds really good. There's all of these things about 2025, especially if you read books like this, if you read the stuff, the idea of what they believe this new age to be, which is the vanquishing of evil. There's a lot of really good sounding stuff there. When you see this stuff, David, what do you think of prophetically? Does this ring any bells, like as far as the way that the beast system is going to be perceived, maybe, or is there a time spoken of to where God's going to restore America? So, what do you think, David? I'm not going to give an opinion because I don't know. I've seen the testimony of Donald Trump saying that he's a believer now. He's changed his opinion since being shot. There's that possibility that wants to shine forth in my heart, that maybe he is a changed man and God's going to use him to bring the righteous to shine again, right? To shine in our country, and he's going to vanquish the wicked, and we're going to see prophetic things where that the wealth of the wicked is going to be transferred to the righteous. Everybody wants to see that. Another thing that I didn't even mention about 2025, this is a Jubilee year, right? According to the Jews and according to the Catholic Church, this is a Jubilee year. Also, according to the Essenes, Jubilee starting. And so a lot going on here. David, I want to get your kind of full scope take on this. What should we do as believers? Should we be looking out for things? Should we be paying attention? Let's hear it.
Well, something that bothers me is Donald Trump's lying. He's lying through his teeth when he says he doesn't know Kevin Roberts. He doesn't know what the Heritage Foundation is, or even who these people are. That's a lie. The Heritage Foundation has been one of the most powerful conservative think tank groups. It was way before even his first administration. He knows who these people are. He knows them personally. That's a lie. And when he says he doesn't know what Agenda 2025 is, that's a big porky. He knows what it is. And the only reason he's definitely lying, my question is, why is he lying? Why does he want to distance himself from this 2025 agenda? And in that document, in the Wikipedia article, it tells how many times Trump's name, I think like 70 times, Trump's name is mentioned in this Agenda 2025. As you can see, this video showed, his cabinet members are people that produced this document, and he don't know what it is. That's a porky. He's lying, but the question is, why is he lying? Now, though, in 2019, and you mentioned the Seven Mountain Mandate, which is an extremely aggressive right-wing conservative movement that gets over into the religious aspect. And in 2019, Netflix produced a documentary, or they aired a documentary, I don't think they produced it, called The Family. And in this, it went into detail about how right-wing conservatives have a secret society that operates right out of a building on K Street, that, they operate like a secret society, and it's not very pretty. And most believers, when they think of secret societies and dirty deeds done dirt cheap, we think of the left. They're so obvious, going along in their little yellow school bus, but we won't even consider the fact of what's behind the curtain over here on the right side. And the fact that there's obviously things here concerning 2025 that Mr. Trump's not being honest about, that troubles me. Why is he lying? And I don't have it all figured out yet. But, and you know, our last time we discussed Mr. Trump, I haven't changed. The Bible says to pray for our leaders, and I pray for Mr. Trump, and I will continue to. But I'm not a glass half full guy concerning the true heart and the drive of what's coming. I just have to.
Good way of putting it. I'm not a half glass guy. Well said.
Remain skeptical. It doesn't feel good to me. That's all I'm saying. It just doesn't feel good to me.
And I would add to this too that there have been many times throughout history that men of God who study prophecy, who study the Bible, have believed that we are coming to a point in time to where things are going to shift. And a lot of people have predicted the coming age at certain periods, and it hasn't come to pass. So if history serves us correctly, nothing will happen in 2025. But there's a lot of things going on. We're at a point in time now to where we're truly able to be monitored. Everybody in the world just about is able to be monitored. They're coming out with digital currencies. Things are definitely shifting in favor of technology. The Elon Musk is getting ready to be placed in a position of power, and he is on the cusp of the technologies that a lot of people very much fear, including him. According to his own testimony, he fears. So there's a lot going on. There's, talks about this date going from historians to people who look at the signs and the stars to people who are prophecy people, etc. There's just so many things concerning this date that I felt like we had to at least bring it forth. As I suggested in the last broadcast we did about these type things, I would say that always pay attention. Don't jump on emotion. Don't go with your first emotion. Based on that, don't attack and be on the narrow path. The Bible says not to go right or left, to be on the narrow path, and to be wise about things. Know what's going on before you act on anything. And with that being said, to love one another. The Bible says that this is how we show that we're his disciples, the love that we have for one another. When he separates the sheep from the goats in the final day, according to Matthew, he separates them, and the ones who, helped the poor, who helped the needy, visited those in jail, who did the things that were actually helping mankind, he said, you did those things. It's like you did it for me. I was the one that you helped. It was me. And a lot of people maybe have done all of these powerful works in God's name. They think, they've moved major crowds. They've cast out demons. They've done these things. And Jesus says, people are going to say, we've cast out demons in your name. We've done all of these things. And he's going to say, depart from me, you workers of iniquity. I didn't know you. And he gives the example, you didn't do any of these things for me. And so, look, we have to really understand what our scope here is as humans. What does God want from us? What does it take to be his hands and feet? And you'll find that the Bible is very clear on what that is to love one another. All of the laws of God hang upon loving others and loving God. And so when we follow God's law and do what he allows us to do, and we are covered by the sacrifice of Jesus, because Jesus is not just an ascended master. What he is he's the King of Kings. He's the Master of Masters. He is the high priest who stands before us to be able to offer sacrifice for the sins that we've committed in this world. And so we need that, and we need to be grounded in these things, because a lot of this doctrine, a lot of these ideas are going to lead you on a rabbit trail that just leads you who knows where. And there's just, because it's constantly a path to enlightenment that people seem to never reach before they die, and then they die like a normal death like anybody else. And so we have to know that there is a hope. And so that's what I hope to convey with everything that we do, because I truly believe that I'm a studier of the esoteric. I've studied the occult. I've studied the Bible, and I can say I'm firmly convinced that the truth is found in the Word of God, and that all mysteries are made known through the Word of God and through the Holy Spirit. And I believe that we're on the cusp of understanding all the mysteries out there. And so I'm thankful to be able to do this with a part of you guys, and I hope you guys subscribe. David, do you have anything last that you'd like to say before we end the show tonight?
Well, a couple of final thoughts. What Jesus said in John 18:36. He said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it was, my servants would fight." And the scripture in 1 John 5:19, it says, "We know that we are of God, and the whole world lieth in wickedness." I believe that's still true today. Some people try to make a biblical case that Israel is the nation of God, but Israel lies in wickedness. Obviously, it does. Some people think that we're becoming more godly. Well, it's like Josiah's revival. When the revival of King Josiah took place, the idols were torn down. And I guarantee you that the biggest phallic symbol in the world in Washington, D.C., it ain't going nowhere. And the idea that people are all excited, well, now we're just going to kill babies in half the states. Now, if anyone really believed that the slaughter of an unborn child was the murder of an innocent, could we just passively endorse the taking of the lives of children in just half the states? I couldn't do that. And there were a few, bless their hearts and God bless you, that stood up against that. But the reason why, and let's just get real, the reason why that position was adopted is because that's what they had to do to get elected. God had nothing to do with that whatsoever in their thinking. So the idea that the things are coming here is a true move of God. There is something coming that's externalizing itself, but I draw clear lines of demarcation between that and the real kingdom of God.
Couldn't have said it better, man. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Okay, guys, I was watching this just before I went live. I was killing a bit of time. I'm out after this, but this is interesting, guys. But I am out after this.
As you see, it is the I am Elazar Yeshua ben Avner, 74 years old, and have served as a rabbi for over 50 years. Never in my life did I believe that Jesus was the Messiah. Over the decades, I debated this point with thousands of people. However, an event on December 25th, 2023, a near-death experience after a car accident, transformed my life entirely. Let me introduce myself. I come from a deeply rooted Jewish family, descendants of the Levites, responsible for serving in the temple. From a young age, I felt the weight of this sacred duty and was raised accordingly. After completing my yeshiva education, my faith led me to Israel, where I lived for many years, and where my son was born in Jerusalem. Those years solidified my Jewish identity and my conviction in awaiting the coming of the Messiah. For me, Judaism
Give the gift fit for a queen these holidays with tickets to global.
Judaism was more than tradition. It was an intrinsic part of who I was. Throughout my life, I tried to live in a way that reflected my devotion to God. However, on December 25th, 2023, an event challenged the foundations of my faith and illuminated a new path. That day started as an ordinary one, the kind of day that should have ended peacefully. It was cold and I was driving home. Just a few kilometers away, the car in front of me suddenly braked. I reacted, but the icy road caused me to lose control, crashing into another vehicle. A sudden impact, a deafening silence, and then everything went dark. When I regained awareness, I found myself in a completely unfamiliar place. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but this was no dream. The air was oppressive and heavy, and an overwhelming darkness surrounded me. a darkness so profound it felt tangible, woven with despair and regret. At first, I couldn't understand where I was. My body felt disconnected from reality, and I was consumed by confusion. It wasn't long before I realized this wasn't a dream. The truth sank in as I heard the wails, heartbreaking cries, whispers full of anger and sorrow. Each voice carried the weight of a soul's eternal torment. Then I began to fall, slowly, steadily, into what felt like an endless abyss. As I descended, shapes and forms started to materialize in the darkness. What I saw was more horrifying than any description of hell I had ever encountered in religious texts. Massive, grotesque figures emerged, blending into the living walls of what I initially thought was a cavern. But these walls pulsated as though alive, and I realized they were made of flesh. Faces trapped within the walls screamed silently, their expressions frozen in agony. Something invisible was pulling me deeper, dragging me down into an infinite void. But this void wasn't empty. It was filled with anger, suffering, and remorse. Every scream, every moan pierced through me, pulling me further into a reality I couldn't escape. Among the tortured faces, I saw familiar ones, respected rabbis and teachers who had guided my spiritual growth. Seeing their anguish in this place was both shocking and devastating. If these were men I had revered, what hope was there for me? In that instant, I knew with certainty, this was hell. When my descent stopped, the full extent of my surroundings became clear. I stood in an unending landscape of fiery valleys, with flames twisting and roaring like living entities. The heat enveloped me, not just physically, but spiritually, searing my very soul. These valleys teemed with shadowy figures, beings neither human nor animal. They writhed in agony, their distorted forms a reflection of tormented souls. Their screams filled the air, each cry revealing another layer of pain and regret. I noticed several prominent rabbis among the suffering. These were men who had dedicated their lives to God, who had taught me how to interpret sacred texts. Yet here they were, chained in the depths of hell. Seeing them in this state shattered everything I thought I understood about righteousness and faith. This was only the beginning of the revelations that would change my understanding of life, death, and faith forever. As I approached, their faces became clearer. The anguish etched on their expressions was undeniable, and recognizing them as the wise individuals I had once respected shattered me. One rabbi's face stood out, a man who had been my mentor since childhood, teaching me the scriptures in yeshiva. But now, his face reflected only despair and regret. I stepped closer.
How to beat the heat if you're struggling to stay cool in hot, stuffy rooms without an air conditioner. This quick solution will take just 5 minutes. This genius trick cools any room in 90.
Desperate to ask, why are you here? How is this possible? Before I could speak, one of them began to talk. His voice was raspy, heavy with sorrow. We were wrong. God's Messiah came, but we rejected him. We didn't see. We were blind. Another voice joined in. We didn't understand God's plan. We clung to the law, but refused the Redeemer he sent. We were blind. Another voice joined in. We didn't understand God's plan. We clung to the law, but refused the Redeemer he sent.
Okay, I smell a bit of a rat here. There's no fellowship in hell. You can't communicate with someone else. So how are these three rabbis saying we were wrong?
We were blind. Their words echoed, breaking something deep within me. The foundation of my beliefs, everything I had devoted myself to without question, crumbled under the weight of these confessions. If these men whom I had revered were here, then what was God's truth? In the depths of despair, surrounded by the oppressive darkness of hell, a sudden beam of light pierced through the void. At first, it appeared as a tiny point in the distance, but it grew, flooding everything with its radiance. This light tore through the suffocating shadows, dispelling the oppressive gloom that had enveloped me. Its purity was overwhelming. Though I squinted against its brightness, it didn't bring pain, only a profound sense of peace. As I tried to focus on the source of the light, a figure emerged. Instantly, I knew this was no ordinary being. His presence transcended human comprehension. His face radiated with brilliance, yet there was an unmistakable tenderness in his expression. Waves of serenity seemed to emanate from him, reaching the depths of my soul. He took a step closer, fixing his gaze on me. In that moment, I felt utterly seen. Without words, I knew he understood every detail of my life, my fears, regrets, and the weight I had carried for decades. Tears began to stream down my face unbidden. Finally, he spoke. His voice was unlike any I had ever heard, rich, warm, and commanding all at once. I have come to show you the truth. I called you, but you did not listen. Today, I revealed what you refused to see. I am here to save you and make you a light to your people. His words pierced through me, forcing me to confront the entirety of my life. My dedication to God, my years in yeshiva, and my quest for holiness in Israel, all of it flashed before me. Yet I also remembered the emptiness I often felt despite my efforts. For all my striving, I had never felt close to God in the way I had hoped. The figure stepped closer, extending his hand toward me. Listen to me, he said. Salvation doesn't come from your efforts. It comes through me. God loves you and sent me to save you. But the choice is yours to make. His words reverberated in my mind. I had spent my life trying to please God, never realizing that his love was already mine. Now standing before this figure, I felt the weight of my regrets and mistakes dissolve in the light of his presence. Doubt crept in for a moment. What if I don't accept this? The thought echoed in my mind, but as if reading my heart, he continued. This darkness you see, it is the result of pride and your own choices. But I can lead you out of here. Not only will I save you, but I will give you a purpose. You will be a light to your people and show them the way. In that moment, I realized a decision lay before me. I could remain in this darkness, lost in eternal regret, or I could surrender myself completely to God and embrace the second chance offered to me. My hands trembled as I hesitated to take his outstretched hand. Through tears, I whispered, "What must I do?" "Believe in me," he said. "Let go of your burdens. Salvation is not in your hands. It is my gift to you. I am here to set you free."
Wow.
His words brought an overwhelming wave of peace. Slowly, I reached out and took his hand. Instantly, everything changed. The screams of hell faded, the darkness evaporated, and the oppressive weight on my soul was lifted. For the first time, I felt truly free, standing at the threshold of a new path, a life and faith that would transform everything I had ever known. When I opened my eyes, a blinding white light greeted me, but it wasn't the divine light that had torn through hell. Instead, it was the fluorescent glare of hospital ceiling lights. Slowly, reality came into focus. The faint hum of monitors, the voices of doctors, the sterile smell of antiseptic. I had survived the crash. Physically, I felt intact, but my soul bore the weight of what I had witnessed. The cries from hell, the sorrow of the rabbis, and most profoundly, the words of Jesus reverberated through my mind. Everything had changed. Lying in that hospital bed, I replayed every moment of what I had experienced. Was this salvation, or would that darkness return? I had been saved by the light of Jesus, but now what? What was I supposed to do? My past clung to me like a shadow. Memories of my years in yeshiva, the teachings of the rabbis.
Fair question. What do I do next? Fair question.
And my lifelong dedication to living according to God's laws flooded my mind. This identity had defined me, my family, my mentors, and my community all depended on it. To question my beliefs now would mean betraying everything I'd ever known and becoming an outcast in the eyes of those I held dear. Yet, The truth revealed by Jesus stood before me like an unshakable mountain. His words echoed in my heart. I came to save you and make you a light to your people. How could I ignore something so profound? I found myself caught in a spiritual storm, torn between my past beliefs and the undeniable reality of what I had seen and felt. The clarity of the truth was overwhelming.
New offline instant translator just dropped. Check out this brand new instant translation device. It can translate any language.
Yet choosing a path forward felt
Okay, guys, I'm
impossibly
out.
difficult.
God bless. See you
I
tomorrow,
asked
guys.
myself, if Jesus is truly the Messiah, was my entire life a lie?